everyone. Welcome once again to another exciting commentary podcast. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today, Dan and I are tackling already the amazing Spider-Man 2. This just came out, what, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I think it was a week or two ago. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what day it came out, but it came out a lot sooner than the other superhero movies that came out this summer. Like Winter Soldier's not even out on Blu-ray yet, and that came out.
I think that's next week, maybe.
Yeah, it's just strange. I don't know.
But we did this with the first one, and thought it would be cool to do it that way with this one. We seem to be kind of all over the place in when we do commentaries. Because, sometimes we do these years after the fact, and sometimes we do them before I ever even do a rewind. There is no rule, there is no format as far as commentaries go. But I am finding that I'm really enjoying doing some of them. I guess lately, new ones I tend to do shortly after they come out, and I'm really enjoying doing that because watching it with another person, even recording it, I get to kind of feel it out and figure more out about how I feel about it and what I think. And so, just so everybody understands, we won't necessarily completely have all of our ideas and what we think completely formulated for this, because we've only seen it a couple times. It's only been out for a while. Dan, how many times did you see this in the theater?
I only got to go see it once, unfortunately.
Wow. Spider Dan only saw it one time.
I know. I was in college when it came out, and it was difficult. We had to take buses and pay bus fare and stuff to get to the movie theater, so it was difficult. So I only saw all the superhero movies that came out this summer while I was in school once. But I have watched this a couple more times since it came out on Blu-ray. I got it the day it came out, and I made sure to do that and watch it a couple times since then.
Well, this is going to be an interesting experience because I've seen it twice now, and I had a very different experience with it the second time. And of course, Dan likes it more than I think everybody. And it has kind of a reputation amongst a lot of fans as just not being what they wanted, just not being very good. A lot of people seem kind of repelled by it, and I think it's very likely, just so folks know even right out the gate, that ours will probably be one of the more positive discussions you'll probably hear about this. Although our podcast was that way too, at least for our parts.
Yeah, and I think we were. The opinion was a lot more diverse on the first movie, but I think we were more positive about even the first movie than a lot of people were. So maybe we'll be the contrarians here too. Who knows? Yeah,
well, we'll see. This should be really interesting. And Dan, I always really enjoy doing these commentaries with you because I always have a different experience and somehow discover a lot of things about my own experience with the movie talking to you by the time I get to the end. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that happens. Everybody, as always, we're going to discuss the film while watching it. So if you'd like to watch it with us, you want to rig up your DVD or your Blu-ray to timestamp 0, get past all the pesky menus, all of those things, and you can watch it with us, or you can listen to it as just a podcast if you're in your car or at a bus stop or in an airplane, and you can and we will do our very best to provide some context so that you can listen to this without having to watch the movie. Though I would say you probably should have seen it at least once or twice. All right, well, Dan, are you ready to get started?
I think so. I think I've said everything I need to say, and I'm just hankering to watch this movie. I'm pretty excited.
All right, well, let's get into it. Everybody, please press play right now.
And here we have the Sony logo, which I think maybe the first time, I don't remember the first movie, but usually I remember just seeing the Columbia logo, which is a company that Sony owns before these movies. Interesting. I don't know.
They want very much for Sony to be synonymous with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
They're not synonymous, but for you to think Sony when you think Spider-Man.
Right.
And you'll notice there's a lot of Sony product placement and stuff all over the movie.
Yeah.
I remember It's Some Random Guy made this joke a lot when the rights, or not the rights, but when the reboot was announced, and he would do videos and be like, Sony presents Sony Spider-Man.
That's very true. And this visual is one of my favorite things about the movie because it immediately establishes what the movie's going to be about, and the clock motif comes back many times throughout, obviously in the ending, but I think that's a cool artistic choice.
That's an excellent point, Dan, and I hadn't put two to two together with that before. And of course, with the clock tower at the end, I was very quick to recognize. Okay, there's kind of a motif there of what Gwen Stacy's been talking the whole movie about time and you know how precious life is and all of that, and so her time is running out, and that's why it's in a clock tower. But the reason I hadn't really noticed that it's kind of bookended like that's really cool, is that every time I see this, I think that's some moving logo for some company involved.
It does abruptly go from the logos to the beginning of the movie. That's true.
And also, it's in CG, so it doesn't even look real. So it
Yes,
sets the
that's true
tone
too.
kind of weird. It really kind of sets the stage in a strange kind of place.
Yeah, it does. That's a
I
good
said
point.
I've said this before. I really like the design of Oscorp because it looks like a beehive, and Norman Osborn is using all of his drones to keep him alive, and that becomes way more important even in this than it was in the first one.
That's a really good point. I never really thought about the beehive thing, but that's really interesting. I always thought it kind of looked like a evil castle tower kind of thing too, which I thought was really cool. Because
It is, but with a catacomb pattern, and I think that's
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's deliberate.
No, I agree. That's really
I mean, it's kind of funny. It's almost, I don't want to say a mixed metaphor, but like, then the whole thing's about spiders and not bees. But it's a, it's an insect thing.
yeah.
Is there any significance to the number 36 on the Parker's door? Because I looked up Amazing 36, and the 36 from the first volume I couldn't find any correlation with. But interestingly, the 36 from the second volume is the September 11th issue.
It's 63, which
Oh, it is. Oh, it's 63. Am I looking at it backwards?
yes, you are.
Oh,
So
oh,
1963.
oh. So there is
Yes,
significance,
yes.
but I was looking. Wow, you're totally right. And you know what's funny? I was watching this today, thinking about that and going and going, make sure that you're not inverting it. And I did. I totally inverted it.
And I can't. I think Amazing Fantasy was 62, but I think the first issue may have been 63. I don't know exactly dates off the top of my head, but it's definitely in a reference to that year, if anything.
I thought it was a neat choice, regardless of what I feel ultimately about how this whole mystery is resolved with his father. I thought it was a good choice to open this with his perspective of the same scene you saw in the first film.
And I think it's very cool how they tie it to American history to some degree, because I think there's a kind of an effort in this movie to make Spider-Man, well, not that he wasn't already, but to sort of drive home the point that he's an icon of American culture without having him land in front of the American flag like he did in Spider-Man 3. Especially with the score, I get the feeling Hans Zimmer's score is kind of it reminds me of a lot of American national anthem patriotism kind of songs. And a lot of people don't like it for that, but I don't know. I kind of like the theme for this movie.
Yeah, it made no impression on me the first time. I like the score a lot better the second time. A lot of people have been down on it because they don't like that Hans Zimmer gets everything now,
Mm.
especially in the superhero realm. I think that the music that's playing during a lot of this opening, especially when he's still in the house, is really cool.
Yeah, I love the theme when Spider-Man jumps off the building in a few minutes here and he's swinging through the city. That's my favorite composition. And of course, we'll talk about later once Electro comes in. I think there's some really cool stuff done with the music there. And it speaks to Mark Webb's previous background as a music video director and how he kind of artistically tried to tell stories with music in like 3 minutes, and he uses the music in here with Electro to say something about his character. What little's there.
So, Dan, being the history and political buff that you are, do you think that there is any like thematic or symbolic reason that the president chosen for the MacGuffin to figure out everything about the big mystery with the father is Roosevelt?
I think so. I mean, Roosevelt was a guy that came into the presidency during the Great Depression and got the country back on track in a lot of ways. I mean, he got into office during the Great Depression and left office with the United States being the primary and most powerful nation in the world. So, not that U.S. power was diminished during the Great Depression. I mean, we were still a very powerful country, but we stood as the kind of sole superpower with only challenged by the Soviet Union, obviously. So, I think Roosevelt is a actor in history that a lot of people view as someone that gave hope to the American people at their one of their most desperate times. And that can be argued, obviously. I don't want to paint Roosevelt is a infallible human being because he did a lot of things like intern the Japanese, which were awful and terrible. But I think
But
Roosevelt's
you're saying that the movie may be saying something about him, or at least saying something about how Peter Parker's father felt about him.
exactly, and how Spider-Man is a character that's supposed to give people hope in desperate times like these too.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of parallels with the lead up to the Great Depression and what's going on today. So I think it's a very apt kind of comparison. See, this is
Yeah.
the
Well, and there's a lot of stuff in this about corruption
yes,
and
very
that
much so.
leading to those sorts of things. Yeah, I liked the score a lot better the second time around. It didn't, like I said, it didn't make an impression on me before, but it's a good mood setter, and I think it's also really important in right away establishing, of course, color palette too, establishing this is not the same movie that we got last time.
No, it's definitely not, and I love it for that. I love the costume. I think this is the best visual representation of Spider-Man's powers in anything I've ever seen, especially when we get to the fight later with Electro and we see the spider sense and everything. This is just a visually gorgeous movie.
I still think that the tone shift from the first one is a little bit jarring.
That's
Uh,
fair.
and it's again, as I said before, I liked it a lot better the second time around because I was ready for it.
Hmm.
And also maybe just having recently spent a lot of time with the first one and doing a full blown analysis on rewind on it helped me like this a little bit better. I think my problem with the tone shift is actually almost more with the first one than with this one,
Oh yeah.
because once Spider-Man goes definitively in that movie from vigilante to superhero and becomes the kind of hopeful figure that he is in this, which happens in that movie. It doesn't happen between the films. It doesn't happen at the beginning of this movie. It happens in that movie.
Hmm.
That shift should have happened already.
I
And
agree.
that movie continues to have that kind of dreary, understated color palette. And so I'm not saying this movie should have that whole kind of tone. Although it is a lot more bombastic than I would have expected, given that last movie and how it was kind of a character study for Peter Parker. But I'm just saying that I think that movie could have set us up for this better.
Oh, I agree. I think the final fight, once he becomes the hero, like you were talking about, instead of the vigilante, should have taken place in the daytime and shouldn't have had as dreary a color palette. And maybe that would have been jarring for that movie. I don't really know, thinking about it, but
Well, I'll tell you how you do it, and I mean this is as I always say, I don't want to rewrite the movie, but in hindsight, the best way to have done it would have been for Spider-Man to go, this costume no longer embodies what I want it to, and he changes it to this costume, and then you have that in the final fight,
that would have
and
been awesome.
that gets us into this. Again, I'm saying that in hindsight. We have suddenly, very quickly in this franchise, with this scene, gone into big, giant, crazy, bombastic action movie territory. And we
Yes.
really, even with the lizards taking over plot, it wasn't really like that last time.
No, it wasn't. It was much more grounded, and I think this movie is kind of a response to the success of the Avengers in many ways. Not even just the fact that they want to franchise this out into spin-offs and stuff, but the tone is kind of, I think, a response to that. In that, I mean, that's the most popular thing that happened before this, so maybe they felt like they had to match it or something. I don't know. As opposed to the last movie in 2012, the most popular thing was the Dark Knight trilogy.
I really enjoy that we're finally getting a thing that I complained about with Raimi movies that we never got. And of course, ultimately, it does sort of turn into everybody is connected, but only at the end. We finally get a random villain out of nowhere,
Yes, I like
which
that too.
used to happen all the time in Spider-Man, and I was really waiting for the Raimi movies to do it, and they never really quite got there. In this, it's Russian mob, just out of nowhere, Russian mob, and then of course you get to the end, and this guy ends up becoming the Rhino, and so then he is connected into that web, if you will, of villains and setting up Sinister Six and all of that. But like, it is cool to get a big opening action scene that doesn't where Spider-Man's just helping people. I mean, it's big. It didn't have to be Russian mob. It could have just been dude with a gun, I guess. It didn't have to be guy in huge armored car that can run over everything.
Right.
But it is kind of nice to get something like that.
I agree, and Paul Giamatti just chews up the scenery that he's in here. He is playing one of the most entertaining cartoon characters in live action I've seen in a while. I absolutely loved earlier too how Spider-Man's ringtone was the '60s cartoon theme song. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and I when I first saw it, I resisted it a little bit because the Raimi films went there, and it just seems like we're doing that again. And I mean, like, I guess I'm of two minds about it because like I can't really complain about it. The theme's kind of fun, and I can see why it would permeate and become a thing even if Spider-Man was actually in real life. But I just anything that reminds me of the Raimi films makes me go, okay, you guys are borrowing from those. Why are we doing that? It rebooted pretty fast. You know what I mean? And it's hard for me not to my mind to immediately go there. I'm not saying that's fair
Right.
necessarily, but my mind does kind of go there sometimes with that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
It, and also, if it's his ringtone, I just wonder where it came from. Like I wonder who wrote it. Is there a TV show? What?
I like all the gags in this opening action scene, by the way, too. I think they all work pretty well. Like the one where he got hit by the ambulance and he just kind of sticks there. I thought that was really funny.
Once again, we've got a Spider-Man that makes a lot of jokes in and out of costume, and so it never feels cumbersome or out of character or anything.
Exactly. See, this is what I'm talking about, the spider sense slow motion kind of thing that they do in this movie. And they do it sometimes in the Raimi movies, like in when he first gets his powers in the first one with the fly and stuff in the hallway. Uh,
Yeah.
but I don't know. There's something about it in this movie where he's like picking out specific things tasks that he needs to do in order to save people in this that really shows you visually how the power works. I think it's done really well.
So right away, Gwen Stacy's speech sets up everything thematically that's going to go on with this movie, or at least a lot of it. And more importantly, though, her worldview. And we'll talk about that as we go along with the film. One of the big complaints I heard about this movie is that it is too like in your face about what the themes are supposed to be, and it doesn't just play them out; it tells you what they are. And the more I think about it, the more I see it, the less I agree with that because Gwen isn't. Yes, she is telegraphing everything that's going to happen in all the thematic stuff, but it's because she makes a lot of it happen. That's her worldview, you know. She in her speech, it's what I'm saying is, it sounds like a thing that in the context of the film she really would write, where she says, "Live your own life, don't live someone else's life." She is in that speech directly addressing how she feels about what her father said to Peter Parker when he died, and that she doesn't feel like that was fair, and he shouldn't have said it. And the most important thing with her character in this, and the reason that it makes a lot of sense to kill her off in this movie, is that it's her whole worldview is it's about how you live your life, not how long you live. And once she dies at the end, even though she only has a few days to live after this speech, it was worth it for her. She
Yeah,
if she had it to do all over again, she would have done it exactly the same way. And so I don't mind all that telegraphing because of the context.
yeah, I agree, and I think it does a lot to make the first movie work a lot better, because one of the big things that we kind of latched onto at the end of the first movie was the fact that Peter maybe looked a little bit unsympathetic when he went back to her at the end. But the fact that she makes her own decisions in this movie and everything sort of comes out of her character, it makes her and Peter both much more sympathetic, and I like that. I liked Gwen in the first movie because she was such a go-getter and proactive and stuff, and she's more so here, and I love that about her in this movie.
It's really easy to look at Peter Parker yo-yoing her back and forth like he does in this and project the Peter Parker from the Raimi films on that and say, make a choice, stop going back and forth. And the difference between those characters, the difference between both Peter and the love interest between the two movies, is that in this film, they do what they do in, well, Peter Parker especially. He he is conflicted and can't decide what he's supposed to do, not because he's selfish, but because he's trying to do the right thing.
He's trying to be selfless.
Yeah, he's trying, and he can't decide which one is more selfless than the other one. If he stays with her, then he's going against what he told her father that he would do, and he's putting her in moral danger. But if he gives her up, well, that's not what she wants.
Right, it'll break her heart. And I like the hallucinations in here too, because that's a callback to the comics. He used to see hallucinations of Captain Stacy all the time. I think that's really cool. After Captain Stacy gets killed by Doctor Octopus in the comics.
It's a thing I sometimes resist in movies that I don't know why it works better in comics. It's a thing I resist sometimes in movies. I like it in this okay because it's not done ad nauseum. It's not ridiculous, and also a lot of time a movie will do it and it tries to be all like ambiguous and almost like in a cutesy sort of way where like it wants you to question, is it a hallucination or is it really his ghost? And in this, it's not. I wouldn't even go so far as to call it a hallucination. I think that's even going too far. I think it's just simply he can't get his mind off of him. He sees him everywhere. And that's just a visual interpretation of that.
Right, and I just love how well the relationship is written in this movie, and that's why I came off liking it as well as I did. Like this scene where he can't go into the dim sung place to sit at the table with her family. You notice in the previous scene they wanted Peter to come over and take a picture with them, but he feels like he can't stand with that family in good conscience because he feels somewhat responsible for the death of the patriarch of the family. And he goes and tries to have dinner with them, and he can't do it because it's breaking the promise that he made to him. And who is he if he sits at the table with his family if he's somewhat responsible for the great loss that they've had? It doesn't come
Yeah.
out and say, specifically state that's why he does those things. It's subtle about it.
I find him quite sympathetic when that's the reason he's going back and forth, and that he is really dramatic in this scene. He is really upset and really conflicted. But I don't see it as whiny. And again, some folks watched this scene and thought that. And to me, it's. When he says, "I can't keep doing this to you. I can't go in there with you." What does it make me? That tells me he's not, he's not doing this to her out of selfishness. It's quite the opposite. He's between a rock and a hard place. He feels like a horrible person no matter what he does, because by leaving her, he's also taking away her choice, what she wants. She wants to be with him, and he's not allowing that to happen. And that's why she's so smart when she says, "I break up with you." I don't think that's melodrama. I don't think that's high school nonsense. I think that's great when she says, "If this is the way it's going to be, we have to make it final, and the only way to make it final is for me to say we're done."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I like about Gwen so much in this movie. Is she's adamant about making her own choices about her life. She refuses to be the typical damsel in distress where she's just kind of a pawn in the decisions of everyone else. I like that about her so much.
You always talk about how one of the things that makes Peter Parker so much so interesting to watch is that things never work out for him.
Yeah.
Like no matter what he does, he's always kind of screwed at the end. And the point is seeing him endure and live on and continue being Spider-Man anyway. One of the things that this movie does that I think is really kind of interesting, and I haven't seen in a lot of stuff, is it's the fact that he has this messiah complex and tries to protect everyone that gets him into so much trouble. And so you have that regular superhero trope of and theme of his he can't have a personal life. He has to be completely selfless in order to protect the world, in order to protect people. But then there's this really kind of difficult conundrum of, when do you protect people, or when do you let them protect themselves? And that's a thing this brings to the table that we don't see all the time. I think,
I've
unless I'm
seen
just
it
not
been
thinking of
I've
stuff.
seen it been done in Spider-Man comics before, like especially with
I
like
guess I'm saying, I guess I mean just movies.
right, yeah. But like in the comics all the time, like Aunt May and Mary Jane will be like, you can't take responsibility for and that dies when you're like Spider-Man will be out on patrol and a crime will happen while he's trying to stop something else and he'll feel responsible. He'll be like, oh well, I wasn't able to stop that crime because I'm just not good enough. And they try to tell him like, it's not possible for you to save everyone.
And if you were a superhero, wouldn't that be a maddening contradiction?
Yeah,
Where you're not allowed to have a personal life, because if you have a personal life, then everybody who is connected to you, related to you, might get killed. And so you make your whole life, just like Spider-Man's doing in this montage. Uh, so you make your whole life about just going around and protecting people, and then there are people who don't want your protection, and there are people that are actually worse off if you don't let them go their own way. So then, wouldn't you feel superfluous? Wouldn't you feel like you shouldn't even be doing anything? And I feel like, stories like Spider-Man No More and stuff like that are somewhat about that, where it's like, maybe I'm making things worse. Maybe I shouldn't even be here. And then something always happens where you're needed, and I think that parallels a lot of real life stuff, where there's so many ethical conundrums where there is no right answer, and you just have to do the best you can, and there's no textbook that can tell you what to do, how to handle things.
exactly. And that's why I wish we were able to see J. Jonah Jameson in this franchise because that's his perspective. He thinks that Spider-Man makes things worse for people because they don't get to do things themselves. They don't protect themselves. They don't learn how to do that. It's kind of like um, what you were talking about earlier.
He often, and Jameson often refuses to acknowledge that Spider-Man does what he does because his heart's in the right place. But I think a lot of the time that character knows that, and he doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah, but he's misguided. He shouldn't be doing these things.
Yes.
And I think one of the things I really like about this movie is you get to the end, and I don't know if Spider-Man made the right call with Gwen Stacy or not.
Yeah, exactly.
She dies. And I should be looking at that and going, see, that's why you should have gotten completely away from her. But I don't feel that way.
No, you don't, because you feel like she did something good for the world by helping Spider-Man defeat these evildoers.
Not only that, but she got what she wanted.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which was simply to be allowed to choose.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's the Matrix.
And
Okay,
this
this
is my least favorite part of the movie.
you know what? Okay. We need to talk about Max Dillon,
Sure.
because I had such a different reaction to him the second time watching it.
Oh, interesting.
When we did our commentary podcast, or commentary, no, I'm sorry, we're doing that right now. When we did our spoiler podcast on this movie, I said cut Electro out of the movie. We don't need him. The movie can do everything that it's doing without him. He is a little too over the top for this. He makes his switch into the psycho kind of villain that he is too quickly, even though he's already kind of crazy before that. He seems crazy before that, just in order for us to buy that. Boy, I don't even agree with myself at all anymore.
Oh, interesting.
I And a lot of it is because I paid more attention to the plot and understood more things. There's a thing that I guess somehow I didn't latch on to before, Dan, which was he came up with the power system Which, by the way, freaking Oscorp is going to power the entire city. Well, that's terrifying. This company is going to power the whole city. Think about what that automatically means on like a metaphorical level, right? Like it has all the power. But so Max Dillon built that. When I first saw this, for some reason, I had the misconception that he was in charge of the electrical side of Oscorp, and it's actually that he made that up and it got stolen from him.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, so he has way more of a reason to A, want revenge on Oscorp, but B, I kind of more buy that he is the kind of social outcast that he is in this, because he's actually a genius and he actually has reasons to to think that people ought to appreciate him, because he's actually really good at stuff, but he's been pushed down so hard for so long that he's completely out of touch and has kind of lost his mind. And all of a sudden, he's a way more sympathetic character to me.
I think that could have worked if there was more scenes like establishing that and going into more depth with his character. I feel like there's not enough there, and I feel like you could have done all that stuff with Harry Osborn, and he has all of the stuff with the father baggage built in. You can parallel with Peter, and you can just go into depth with more and his and Peter's relationships possibly. And I think he would have been a more interesting villain. I think he should have chosen one. That's what I'm trying to say. Like Electro or Green Goblin could have worked better in this movie if there was just one principal villain in the movie.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly what I thought the first time I saw it, but then I felt a little bit better about it the second time. I don't know. I guess this time around I kind of enjoyed seeing the parallels between him and Harry. But then you're right. One of these characters doesn't have that whole father mentor thing, unless you want to stretch it and say that Spider-Man is sort of that for Max Dillon because he takes it too far.
Right.
And so so you have, Harry Osborn's father discards him. Peter Parker feels like his father might have discarded him, but he finds out that that's not really the case, and then that's why he's different than these characters. And then Max Dillon didn't have that until he created in his mind this version of Spider-Man that is his best friend because of one exchange they had, and then Spider-Man discards him. So that's kind of there.
Yeah, kind of. um,
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's better than I gave it credit for.
oh
I
yeah,
think
sure.
is all I'm saying. Could you have made this movie without him? Yes, absolutely. However, all of the stuff about power and using the electricity in that character of Electro to play with that idea, and having, Norman Osborn has all the power. He uses that in order to try to stay alive. He thinks living as long as he can is more important than the way he lives. And then you got Gwen Stacy, who has the opposite thing. There's more going on in this movie than I gave it credit for in the first place. Is all
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
saying.
And I have no qualms with Jamie Foxx in this movie. I think he does a pretty good job with what he's given. I like Jamie
He,
Foxx
he
generally.
he's Jamie Foxx is clearly loving getting to play this role for some reason. I don't know why, but I mean, he just I think he just took Electro and went, I've decided it's the coolest Spider-Man villain. Nobody else thinks that, but I've decided that he's the. And I think by taking that approach, he probably made something more out of it than it even could have been. I don't know. I'm sure there are huge Electro fans, but there's a lot of different versions of that character too. So
Yeah, he's very different most of the time whenever he shows up. And there's a deleted scene from this movie that shows Electro's mother, which I think would have done a lot for his character in the movie. I haven't watched the deleted scene, but I've heard that there's his mother is very neglectful, and that's why he latches on to Spider-Man because his mother didn't care about his birthday and totally forgot it. So he like creates this illusion in his head that at least somebody cares about him.
it would have been nice to have that then, because he and Peter both have in common that they're would then both have in common that their parents weren't around, and that would give him sort of that same thing
And it would
that they had, and then he's replacing a parental figure with Spider-Man, sort. I mean, yeah, I guess he's not seeing him as a mentor; he's seeing him like as a best friend, but it's still like, oh, you need me, and I like that's his permeating thing throughout the movie is I need someone to need me.
right. And that's what's going on with Harry too. That's kind of uh
Yeah.
his character arc as well. And the mother thing, I think, can be paralleled somewhat with what Aunt May goes through in this movie, where she feels like Peter is so obsessed with this parental thing that he doesn't return the love that she has for him unconditionally.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting kind of hypocrisy that happens between both of them, where neither of them gives the other one entirely the truth, but they expect that from the other one, and it's because they're both trying to protect each other, and so they feel justified because they're trying to protect the other one.
Right.
But then, even though the other one is trying to protect them, they still want the truth. We'll talk about that when we get to the scene where they argue about that, because I think there's a parallel with what Gwen does also
Oh,
in
interesting.
in her in that scene. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Um, the bad guy from the Muppets
Yes.
playing Norman Osborn, I think he's fantastic.
Oh, I
We don't
think
get a lot with him, but I'm assuming later on we will, and I'm very excited to see more from this guy.
me too. I think both of the casting of the Osborns is very good. I like Dane DeHaan a lot in this role. I think he's fantastic. I think he has fantastic chemistry with Andrew Garfield as well.
Yes, he does. I like their relationship more in one scene than I liked the Peter Harry relationship in all three Spider-Man movies,
Hmm.
and I mean they had chemistry together too. It's just that then after a while he started hating him for no good reason. But what's really funny is this Harry has the same thing. We'll, we'll get there, but Harry in this actually also ends up hating Spider-Man for no good reason. But we'll get there.
I think Dane DeHaan plays the rage that Harry has from being a neglected child a lot better than Franco did. And I like Franco in the Raimi trilogy. I think he's good. But I tend to like Dane DeHaan a little bit better.
Do you think if Franco had simply had really, really pale makeup and dark eyeshadow, then we would have appreciated that more? It's like all you got to do is give that character a debilitating illness.
Not that, I mean, maybe if he didn't look like a snowboarder, not that the Green Goblin looks much better in this movie. We'll get there. But I
No,
love
they still can't decide what to do with that. They're like, oh, we won't give him a mask. We'll just sort of try to kind of make the face look sort of like kind of a mask.
it's
Okay,
I
okay.
think it's cool that they went halfway with the because that's the idea I always had. Go halfway ultimate, halfway 616, where you mutate him to look like a goblin. That's his actual skin. And that's what's going on with Norman here. He's got the goblin hands like Ultimate Goblin does, which is cool.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that because I haven't read enough Ultimate, I guess. But
Yeah, I picked up on that right away. I thought that was cool. But then like I don't think they went far enough with it. Like when I saw the hands in the theater for the first time, I was like, yeah, Harry's gonna have like
oh, you're right. That's cool.
yeah. I was like,
they're
Harry's
they're
gonna have
playing that
green
really
skin.
subtle. They're
Yeah.
playing that really subtle too. Like I might not have even. Oh, I didn't notice that before, so I'm glad you pointed it out. Wow,
Yeah, it's
that's
really
cool.
cool. Like
Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when I first saw this, I expected Harry to have full on green skin and everything. Like maybe even wear the something that looked like the purple cap. I was like, oh, this could be cool. Um, but
I just feel like if you're gonna do Rhino as a huge giant mech robot, I don't know why you can't let the Goblin look kind of like a Goblin. Like we're clearly okay with doing really over the top, insane comic book stuff. I mean, come on, that Rhino is more insane than anything we've ever seen in a comic book.
that's true.
Way more insane. What are we doing?
And I
And
love,
don't get me wrong, I love it. I think
yeah,
it's fine, but wow. Okay, so importantly, I gotta mention this because
sure.
when we get to a scene later, I'm gonna talk about some stuff. So I want to set it up real quick. So everybody keep in mind that Norman Osborn has given Harry a flash drive or some kind of drive that has all of his research about what he's tried to do what he's done to prolong his life and to try to fix his illness. That's going to be very important later on when Harry Osborn acts like he's going to, for some reason, die tomorrow.
And we'll talk about that because I think I've thought about it a little bit, and I think there's a potential explanation, but it's not in the movie, so.
Oh, okay. I'm excited to hear about it. We'll make everyone wait, including me, with bated breath. We didn't talk earlier about Gwen Stacy just happening to run into Max Dillon in the elevator. This movie is weird in that it builds a lot of story points, well, a lot of okay. It builds up to a lot of story points that have to happen later with convenient meetings in elevators. I don't understand that. There's going to be one later on. It's always with Gwen. It's Gwen in an elevator meeting a person completely conveniently just when the script really needs these two characters to meet, and it's kind of the laziest way you can do it.
That's
And
true.
and the first movie has some of that. I think that the second movie has more of it.
Hmm.
Where things just kind of built on easy story conveniences and contrivances. The big one in the first one being the guy who drops the research.
Yes, yes. The I forget what the character's name is in that movie. But we're about to get the spectacular Spider-Man animated series version of Electro's origin here,
Yeah.
where he falls into the electric eel vat, which I thought was really cool that they borrowed from that series because that's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Spider-Man adaptation that's not a comic book. It's just simply one of the best things ever. So
It's it's similar to because you don't get a lot of these movies borrowing directly from good animated series, and it's kind of like Batman and Robin taking Mister Freeze and just taking them straight from the the Batman animated version.
that's interesting considering that a lot of people compared the villains of this movie to Schumacher-esque
Which is part
villains.
of why I bring it up because a lot of people have said that he reminds them of Edward Nygma in Batman Forever, and I had the same thing when I first saw it because he has an obsession with our hero.
Hmm.
Edward Nygma has an obsession with Bruce Wayne. They're both brilliant, but socially awkward, and I have a really skewed vision of the world and think that the hero that they're obsessed with is suddenly their best friend. They both have that, and then they both turn on them in an instant when they don't get their way. So his origin becoming the villain is a lot like the Riddler origin.
Yes, it is. And we're in the span of like, 5 minutes here, we're about to get two Spider-Man characters set up. We had Smythe a minute ago there, and now we're gonna have Felicia Hardy. So we're really setting up this Spider-Man expanded universe thing pretty hard in this movie, and that's one of the things that I think people resisted about it. But I don't know. It didn't really bother me too much because it wasn't all that in your face, I didn't think.
I would have resisted it. I don't think I resisted it at all. But I'm sorry. I think people would have resisted it less had Sony never said anything about a Spider-Man expanded universe. I think if that had not been news and had never come out, people would have gone, "Holy crap, we're using Spider-Man characters in this. This is fantastic."
Mm.
Because I mean, like, is it outside of the idea of we want you to know that we're gonna give you more movies that are outside of just Peter Parker movies? What how in your face is it really? What's the problem with supporting characters have names you've heard of?
Yeah, I
Because
didn't
that's
really get
ultimately
it
what
either.
it is. It's okay. We got Felicia and we've got Smythe. And I mean, like in the first movie, there were places where I was like, we could easily have Smythe here. Where is he? So I mean, like, I was really happy to have if you're gonna have this many characters in a movie and you're gonna have some kind of lesser characters that don't get a whole lot to do. Yeah, make them characters that are from the comic books. They have to be generic. But I also don't mean to say that everybody has to be somebody I've heard of, but they don't always have to be generic random people, especially if they have potential to do something with later.
Right, exactly.
I will say that Felicia's last name should have been in the scene. And I'm not saying that simply because I want them to come out and confirm that it's definitely Felicia Hardy. I'm actually saying that because I don't think the scene makes as much sense without it. Really? So Harry Osborn has just promoted her to the top banana right underneath him and said, "You all work for Felicia," and he's not going to ask what her last name is. Really? It's almost glaring that they're not giving it to you as if they want you to wonder. I don't understand that. Just call her Felicia Hardy already.
I really liked this scene. This is the scene that we were talking about earlier between Peter and Harry. Even though the relationship between the two of them is supposed to have been pre-established, and I can see where people are coming from, where they're like, oh, maybe it's kind of weird that they didn't talk about Harry at all in the first movie, since it was so Oscorp centered. Peter didn't mention at all any sort of pre-existing relationship to the son of the company that he was like fighting against. That's kind of weird, but watching this movie, it kind of didn't really bother me at all because I liked the chemistry between the actors so much. I mean, it's a story problem, I have to admit, but It
I
didn't
was
ruin the movie for
surprised.
me.
Yeah, I was surprised that the chemistry made me believe that they really did know each other and that it wasn't retroactive, even though it is retroactive. It's one of those hindsight things that it's pulled off about as well as you could pull it off, I think. But yes, it's too bad they didn't have the foresight in the first movie, and there would have been no way they could if they didn't know they were going to do this. But it's really too bad we couldn't have had enough foresight for him to just simply say, "Oh, really? Gwen Stacy, you work at Oscorp? My childhood best friend is the son of that." Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is a problem. But kudos to this script, and I can't believe I'm saying that because it's an Orsi Kurtzman script, and I usually really don't like them, and I found myself actually liking a lot of the dialogue in this better than I did the first time, maybe just because I was ready for it. But watching it this time. But yeah, this is genuine. These guys look like they have known each other forever, and I do really like this whole idea that Harry got sent off to boarding school and he's finally coming back, and like he embraces Peter so quickly because he is normal, it helps him not to have a super crazy stuck up attitude. I feel like that was kind of a problem that Spider-Man 2 Harry Osborn had, that he was too quick to just get really arrogant when he didn't really have that as much, but the kind of arrogance he had before. And although I guess that was partially because his dad died and he was overcompensating. So
Right.
okay, but I do feel like this character's a little more genuine than that.
I feel that way too, and I do like the thing that this movie brings in from the comics, in that whenever someone gets sent off to Europe in the comics in Spider-Man, it's always for some terrible reason, or something terrible is about to happen to them before they leave for Europe. So Harry got sent to boarding school in Europe, came back, and his dad died. And when Gwen's about to leave with Peter to Europe, she dies.
The moral of this story is don't go to Europe if you're a Spider-Man character.
America.
So yeah, it's like what are we just being silly, or are we saying something? Like Peter Parker is such an inherently American character that Spider-Man stories hate the rest of the world.
The one thing I have to criticize about Harry in this movie, besides the things that we'll get to later, they missed the
Because there's
opportunity.
stuff.
They missed the opportunity to give him the goofy ridged haircut from the comics, and it exists. I've seen people with it before.
I know. I hate that too. Because when they first announced back in the late '90s, early 2000s that we were getting a Spider-Man movie, and that Harry Osborn was going to be in it, the first thing I said was, "Oh, cool! Is he going to have a haircut where wherever direction his hair turns, the lines stay in the same place? Are they going to do that digitally? Are they going to motion capture that?" Then we had a chance to do it again. Wouldn't it be great if he was wearing this like hoodie thing that was a motion capture
Yeah, we
head
should have cast Andy
with dots
Serkis to
on it?
we should have cast Andy Serkis to play Harry Osborn's hair. The performance would have been fantastic.
It's just in every scene he's wearing a motion capture like bald cap with just dots on it. That's awesome. But yes, I really do like the character parallels between these two, and that of course helps them to reconnect. So they're not. And I don't just mean the artsy fartsy. Oh, cool! It's artsy and stuff because they're the same. I mean sometimes I do get giddy about that, but it's good. But I like this here because it's not just, oh, we were childhood friends and so we just picked up where we left off. They have like really good dramatic reasons to be reconnecting here.
Yeah, and Peter Parker is sort of rediscovering his father at the same time that Harry just lost his and doesn't really have any interest in discovering his legacy, and he's only discovering it because he has to, right? Like the only reason he wants to go back and rediscover the Osborn legacy is because he has that terrible debilitating disease, whereas Peter's like, my father was good to me from what I remember. I want to figure out why he left, because I can't understand that.
It's the difference between, and again, we get this with a lot of characters all over this movie. The difference between, truth for truth's sake and knowledge in order to discover immortality. And so Peter Parker is presented as a more justified and altruistic reason because he simply wants to know the truth about his father so that he knows the truth. Just like, I mean, we can all relate to that. We would all want to know.
Right.
Does he need more of a reason than just simply, it was my dad, I want to know? And I also want to know if he was one of these horrible Oscorp people or if he actually had a reason for the things he did. And then with Harry, he says, and by the way, he is very Smallville Lex Luthor, right? Where he says a couple of times, "I don't want to become my father," and yet he already is very much his father,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
He's obsessed with this idea of living as long as he can. And yes, if you had a horrible disease like that, and you might die tomorrow. I mean, he's not going to die tomorrow. I don't know why he thinks that, but or at least I don't think so. You might die tomorrow. Then you would be trying to discover a reason, but wouldn't you be a much better person and live a better life if you had more of Gwen Stacy's attitude? And yet, you get to the end of the movie, and the question is, does Gwen Stacy's attitude get you killed?
Yeah, and I think importantly too, Harry talks about how he when he was in Europe, he did nothing but party and hook up with girls and stuff. He probably feels like he hasn't accomplished anything in his life yet, or enough that his life was worth living in the first place. Like his dad calls him a different disappointment who had potential because he didn't really do anything with what he was given because he was so like he was brought up in that really rich household with a dad that didn't guide him. He didn't know what to do with himself.
And he also has that line. I'm glad we're talking about this now because we talked over that scene. He also has that line where he says, "I had to sacrifice your childhood for something more important,"
Mm.
and that's an idea that kind of continues from some of the stuff we have with the lizard in the first movie. Is that humanity is not as important as being physically superior.
Mm.
So this is the sacrifice you must make in order to endure, and it's that I always tend to latch on to the question of what's more important, living a long time or how you live. I always tend to latch onto that, and so that's a theme in this that I really and I thought I think a lot of it works pretty well until it doesn't.
And that speaks really well to what we were talking about earlier. And you talking about what I find interesting about Spider-Man is he always tries to do the right thing, and that's why he's able to endure. Harry's obsessed with enduring itself, and that's what ultimately destroys him. Whereas Peter Parker endures because he's able to do the right thing, and that's not what he's worried about. He'll throw everything away if he has to.
So even though this movie is a lot more over the top in comic book superhero fare, bringing in some of that Raimi stuff, Mark Webb is still bringing in that thing that he brought to the table in the first movie, which is romantic relationship stuff. He and it's still good. It feels a little bit weirder because it's not as much the driving force as it was in the first movie. There's still a lot of it. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel quite as much of the driving force, and that's only because the bombastic supervillain stuff starts before the third act. Right, like because in the first movie it doesn't feel like a superhero movie until it turns into one, and this movie it's you've got this stuff and the superhero stuff. I feel like that's juggled still better in Spider-Man 2 than in this one, but juggled better, but the romantic stuff not as good.
I think that it works well enough because the romantic stuff is what the movie is sort of like all the themes and the conflicts of the movie are kind of central to that relationship.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and that's where the crux of the humanity in the story is.
Exactly.
Creating juxtaposition between that and again what Harry Osborn's worldview ends up being.
And that's why I think I kind of resisted Electro as opposed to Harry Osborn instinctively because his conflict in the movie is based on human relationships too, where Electro's is kind of like lack thereof, and they're not. I feel like we don't get enough development with him to like I don't know understand how that lack of relationships affected him, other than like he's obsessed with Spider-Man for some reason.
Yeah, and I felt exactly the same way the first time I saw it. The second time, I found myself wondering what, and I guess obviously familial stuff would have been really nice.
Mm.
But besides that, I do think that part of the point is that it's a very very simple character and that there's not much to him. And
Yeah, I mean that's why it was kind of like, well, Harry's a more interesting character to me because he's inherently more complex. There's more going on with him. So we take Electro out and we can make Harry Osborn's plot make sense. You know?
no, that's true. Although that plot could have made sense even with him still in the movie,
Right.
because that's not a time issue. That's a weird logic-y leap, people not using their thinking brains issue. I think. Again, we'll get there. We're dancing around it, but we'll get there.
Right.
But I don't know. Like with Electro, I feel like, and again, you're right. Maybe we just don't have enough background and information. But we've all met guys kind of like him. He's definitely like a really exaggerated version of it.
Yes.
Or maybe not. Maybe we've met people even almost that exaggerated. I don't know. I know. I remember in high school a couple of people that were that were really insecure and antisocial to the point of ridiculous. Where they would do that same kind of thing of like making up. Like he does in the elevator with Gwen, because we gotta have elevator scenes. Where where he like makes up a party that he can't invite her to because the guest list's full. And I've known people like that, and I think the idea is supposed to be that the society that has been built partially because of Norman Osborn, at least not the society, but like the world he lives in, being at Oscorp, created him. It made him that way. He has been turned into something less than human because of the way Norman Osborn is treating people. And the way everybody under him is treating people that are under them. It's this awful hierarchy thing. And he got shoved so much to the bottom, even though he is brilliant and he got his plans stolen away from him, that he is like really crazy, antisocial, and crazy, and you can't believe how out of touch he is. And yet, is it his fault that he got that way? I think that stuff is in the movie. It's not at the forefront, and I didn't pick up on a lot of it the first time around. But I'm just saying that I would like to give it a little bit more credit for it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's enough there that I could be interested in him, but I just wish there was a little bit more. And
I like that. I like that Spider-Man does the best he can to fix this situation right here. And I really actually kind of buy that that Electro, just being as kind of out to lunch as he is, that he actually thinks that Spider-Man set him up and stuff.
yeah, I agree. And it's interesting to see this kind of guy deal with a situation like this, because I can imagine he's a guy that's never like had direct conflicts with people. Like we see him in his head before, like wanting to punch Smythe in the face, but he's so self-conscious that he doesn't do it because he feels powerless. And you give that kind of person power, and this is what they're going to do. They're going to lash out at people. It makes sense.
Yeah, and importantly, he gets ambushed here, right? Like
Right.
he's not trying to hurt anybody at first. Um, when he says it's not my fault, it really isn't his fault. When I first saw this and all this stuff about like I just want people to see me, I thought I didn't really care for that stuff. I thought it was kind of just too over the top. I could see like just I want people to pay attention to me, but not like I need everyone to know who I am. Why is it about fame all
Right.
of a sudden? Um, but I guess it's more okay when I think about the fact that he thinks he should be a big shot because of what he can do.
Hmm.
And maybe the problem is that that's not brought enough to the forefront. Maybe the
Yeah, I
problem
agree.
is he's not played up as the genius that we're told he is, with kind of a couple of, I don't want to say throwaway lines, but it's not to the forefront, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's expository, but do we really get to maybe we just should have seen it demonstrated somehow that like this guy really is worth people looking at him as a very relevant and important person,
He has
somebody
something
that
to offer to the world, just like Spider-Man does, and everyone in this movie does. But
yeah, exactly.
he's just been kind of taken advantage by other people and neglected to the point where he feels worthless or felt worthless before he got this power.
And maybe the issue is just that we don't get enough of like why and how he got pressed down. Like if we could see more of, he's not assertive. If he was just more assertive, you know what I mean? Like maybe put the ball a little more in his court and make it partly his fault and partly Oscorp's fault. Maybe it would work a little better.
Right. And I think the
But
scene with his mother might have helped in that quite a bit.
maybe the reason we question it so hard, Dan. I mean, I guess I'm liking it a little more than you now, but maybe the reason that we question it so much is that it is pretty clear that that stuff was not given nearly enough attention. And not as much attention as some of the other stuff. But then I feel that way about Harry Osborn when we get to his obsession with getting Spider-Man's blood later.
Yes. I love the effects on Electro here. A lot of people kind of criticized it for looking like Dr. Manhattan, but I like seeing all the synapses and the nerves in him because those are the things that run on electricity in the human body, I think, right? I don't know all that much about anatomy, but I think that's right.
I think the deal is if you make it blue, and that's just the color I guess it would be if you're and what it was I guess at least in Ultimate. If you're gonna
Yes.
make it blue and you're gonna try to do something sort of pseudo realistic with you get to see the veins and stuff, yeah, it's gonna look like Dr. Manhattan. What are you gonna do? I
Right.
mean, because they were doing the same sort of thing. Um, I can see the criticism of make it seem fresh and new, but I don't know what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, they would have had to
Yellow?
create something completely new costume wise, and people might have complained even more about that rather than because there's no way you're doing the 616 Electro costume in this movie. There's no way.
Marvel Studios would have done it.
I don't even think
Even
they would have
no,
went
even they
there.
would have no. It's not like we got the Batrock the Leaper costume.
That's very true. Oh, I would have loved that. I'm just glad we got Batroc the Leaper in a movie. Period.
Let's see, what else could we have done, Dan? We could have made it yellow, but then people would be like, "Oh, he's the electric yellow bastard."
Yeah, that's true too.
I think the problem is we've just had a lot of comic book on screen now.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just going to be hard to make things look like completely original.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I was talking about. I was talking about the spider sense demonstration. I love how this scene is shot and compiled. It's fantastic. And I like that
It's
Spider-Man
a
has
lot like
problems with his web shooters in this movie too. One of them breaks. Like in the last movie, we had him have web shooters, but he might as well have had the organic webbing because he never ran out and they never broke. In this movie, one of them breaks and he has to develop new webbing to combat Electro. I like that a lot.
yeah, that's really cool. And of course we'll get to it later, but of course I also really like that Gwen Stacy has to tell him the somewhat obvious thing,
Yeah.
uh, and he's like, "Oh wow, I should have thought of that." And then she's like, "That's why you were number two at the high school." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's pretty funny," but. A big question I have, and I guess I'll mention this here just because I'm thinking about it, is like how long does it take for the webbing to dissolve in this because he gives that one kid webbing for his wind turbine and then days later it's still on his wind
Oh,
turbine.
that's
So
true.
if he's shooting this much webbing all over the place, there must be cleanup crews all over New York all the time trying to get rid of this stuff. That's why we usually have the it dissolves within an hour rule,
Yeah.
but I don't think any of the Spider-Man movies have handled that quite very well, have they?
No, it's not really mentioned at all how long it sticks around for. That's a good point.
So we talked over it, and we'll get more of it later. But one of my favorite things in the design of this movie is that sound design, and you alluded to it earlier of the chant that happens in Electro's head before he causes all this mayhem in Times Square, and it is a really cool and unsettling kind of musical cue, and I always am a sucker for the score is also part like affecting the plot.
Yeah, definitely.
Like they're connected now, and just getting in his head like that for a minute, like that reminds us just how demented he is.
Yeah, exactly. I think this movie feels a lot more like a specific style from Mark Webb as a director than the last movie did.
That's a great point. I love Spider-Man in a fire hat.
Me too.
Uh, because Spider-Man in the comics does stuff like that all the time,
Yeah, he
where
does.
he'll wear different costumes and just to be silly, he'll like put on a jacket or he'll wear a tie or something. And I want to say the Spider-Man in a fireman hat is a thing I've seen before.
I think it might be. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I remember thinking in the theater, that seems like something I've seen before. That's pretty fun. I just like that they don't shy away from that kind of stuff. And again, he's totally the kind of character that would do those sorts of things because he handles tense situations with humor.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I heard people criticize about this movie in relation to the casting is that nobody looks like they're still in high school. Did you notice that and feel that a lot in this movie?
Well, I probably should, but I'm just so used to it in other things that I don't even think about it anymore. I mean, when you grow up with Power Rangers, all bets are off. But like, we had Tom Welling who was already like what 23 or something when he got cast as a ninth grader. So this is not worse than that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they look terribly old, but
They definitely look like they're well into college, but I don't think they look
yeah,
like they're 30 or anything because they're not 30.
I think they are in their
Or are they?
30s.
Are
Yeah,
they?
I
Okay,
think
well,
Andrew
you
Garfield
know,
is at least. I think Emma Stone's a little bit younger.
look, with stuff like that, I can somewhat suspend my disbelief, especially with sequels when it takes time to make a movie. I mean,
Yeah,
like, what do you
exactly.
want to do? Recast every time we get a movie? Like ages are hard. People age. People. I mean, that's what this movie's about. Mortality.
Exactly. And it's difficult with Spider-Man especially because he's, famously a character that is a young person. Like it's not even like Superman where they chose to go in that direction. Spider-Man you kind of need to have as a young person at least at some point in his career.
I think it's very interesting that we have a montage right here that is somewhat mirroring the montage we got with the Coldplay song in the first movie,
Mm.
and they're doing very different things with it. But both scenes are using the lyrics of the song to the lyrics have something to do with what's happening in the scene, and we reflecting it. But in the first movie, it's about elation, and in this movie, it's about chaos.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And again, Mark Webb, I think his music video background speaks to why he likes to do things like this.
Also, it's yeah. Also, it's we in the first movie if things are finally coming together for me, and of course they come crashing down after this. In this, it's things are coming apart, um, and I don't have a family anymore. Gwen was his family. Do you think that the reason that he suddenly starts getting really deep into the mystery of his father again is because he and Gwen broke up?
Yeah, I think those are the two like obsessions in his life at this point. And you take one out of the equation, the balance goes away.
Like he has to connect with his father if he doesn't have her, which is kind of sad because like well he has May, but he doesn't feel like he can talk to her.
Yeah, because it's interesting in these movies, they kind of took the relationship that Peter had and Aunt May have in the comics, where like Peter's kind of always ducking out on her and stuff, and did something with that. Like they don't really have all that close of a relationship, other than him. She raised him and made him wheat cakes in the morning, that kind of thing. It's interesting that they went somewhere with their characters there, and
I also wonder if one of the reasons that he feels like he can't talk to Aunt May is because he feels like she's too broken after what happened to Uncle Ben, and he just can't burden her with things.
right, that's very true. I wanted to mention when we were doing that montage earlier too. Did you notice the Roosevelt Island? I forget what they're called. The things that the kids and Mary Jane are in the first Raimi movie that falls off the bridge.
No, I didn't think
Yeah,
about that. Okay,
I I,
cool.
I always thought that was a reference to the first movie, which I thought was kind of cool.
Well, you could also take it as I mean, it's a really really nerdy one, but you could also potentially take it as foreshadowing
Yes, because
because
that's
that
the
scene
reference to
they
Death of Gwen Stacy from the
they
comics.
made a reference to Gwen Stacy with that scene in that movie, and we're actually going to get it in this one. Holy crap! Mind blown. That's awesome. I don't know if they intended it, but it's there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like this montage a lot too. I think it's pretty funny.
This is once again mirroring a little bit, or going back to that scene where he was playing with his web shooters in the first movie. We're doing that kind of sequel thing where we go back to some of the things we did last time, and we've progressed, and here's where we are now. And he still does some of these same kinds of things, but it's not the same movie over again.
Right,
Which
exactly.
you really have to expect not to get anymore because almost everything's a franchise now.
Right.
So like, really, don't have sequelitis anymore. You ought to already have a blueprint for your sequel when you finish the script for the first one. I'm kidding, but
No, but that's true.
I'm just saying we can't tolerate we can't tolerate sequelitis anymore at all when you're dealing with franchise things that were meant to be franchises at the beginning,
Oh,
right?
definitely not.
You know, if a superhero movie goes Home Alone on us, that's not good. I think this guy who plays Peter's father really kind of tears it up, especially because he's got such disjointed stuff he has to do.
I
I mean, he
agree.
never gets to play, except for the beginning of this, he never gets to play just a normal dramatic scene, right? Like, it's always flashback stuff and videos and.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this scene's really interesting too because Harry Osborn, which is something I didn't think about when I saw this movie for the first couple times, is Harry potentially has more information about Peter's father that Peter would want. So he has an incentive to give Harry his blood at this point if he wants to figure out things about his dad. It's not really mentioned, but he has all this information with videos about his dad on a thumb drive. Of course, it's going to be things Peter doesn't know about him.
That's a really good point, and that almost kind of hurts it a little bit because it's like, why isn't he thinking about that?
Yeah,
Good point. And maybe he is, but you'd almost expect. I guess the problem is if he started suddenly talking to Harry about it, he would have to reveal things he knows,
that's true. Yeah.
and he might be, at the at the worst, he might be risking giving him a secret identity.
And of course, this scene has things cut out of it. We see footage of Harry and Peter in these clothes, I think, in the trailer for the movie, where Harry talks about Oscorp having Peter Parker under 24-hour surveillance. And
I don't know what that means because
that's,
that never
yeah,
happens.
that's not in the movie at all. So maybe that was brought up in some scene that was cut. Who knows?
I wonder why they were doing that. Well, I mean, I guess it would potentially make sense if it was like that we know who Sonny was, and we do that with maybe they do that with lots of people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe they know the thing about um, they project in the first movie that Peter's father kind of did something to Peter's blood that made him receptive to the spider that bit him in the first
Oh, I
place.
forgot all about that whole thing. Yeah, good call.
So maybe they were tracking for that reason. I don't really know.
That would probably be the reason. Dan, I want this many screens in my office.
That'd be pretty awesome, right? Then you'd have enough where you could throw darts at them like the Shredder in the first Ninja Turtles movie.
One of these, that's one of my big dreams on my bucket list is to make a video either in a series or just a short film or something where I, in an evil villain rage, break a TV with something.
That's one of the best things I've ever heard
Someday, Dan, it's going to happen. I could die happy when I've broken a TV on
too.
film.
See, and one of the things that I think might have talked about this a little bit in the spoiler cast, but like, I think maybe the reason Harry's so concerned that he's going to die right away is that Norman tried to kind of he kind of tried to preserve his life at the cost of everything else, and it made him so sick and bedridden his entire life that he wasn't able to do or accomplish anything. And I think that's something that I could be potentially part of Harry's character, where it's like Norman tried to survive at all costs, and he had already accomplished something. He built a corporate empire, whereas Harry feels like, what have I done with my life? I can't spend this time just being bedridden for 20 years and then die anyway.
That'd be great, but he needs to say that
Exactly.
somewhere. And also, we don't have anything like enough information about Harry Osborn. I mean, I'm sorry, about Norman Osborn and his illness. Here's the problem. We see him standing upright, not looking even remotely sick when he's more than middle-aged in that
He
video.
had a cane.
That's very important. Okay, so he's got a cane, but he's upright. I mean, like, he's got to be 40 or 50 at that point, right? The problem is Harry Osborn goes through the research. 14 years, says 14 years for nothing, and that implies that even though he's been doing all this stuff to prolong his life, nothing ever took even a little bit. I'm not sure he even did prolong his life at all. I wonder if the idea is supposed to be that the illness took its course naturally the way it was supposed to. And if that's the case, why does he think that he doesn't have any time? I just don't understand that. And we just don't get enough information about what the illness is and how it works.
I think I agree there's not enough information in general, but I think it's kind of implied, I think at least, that Norman Osborn would have died if he hadn't done all that research, because like if he had the disease and he knew he had time, why experiment so rapidly on himself in the first place? You know what I mean?
Well, that's true, but the line 14 years and nothing to show for it bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, he was unsuccessful in like achieving the goal that he wanted. He was
But
trying.
nothing to show for it. Here's what I don't get, okay? If you're Harry Osborn and you're this desperate and you think the only thing that has the potential to cure you is that spider, but you know that there's research there that could prolong your life until you're sure it won't drive you insane or do what it did to the lizard last movie, why would you risk it? Doesn't make any sense.
I think, well, that I don't know.
You see what I'm saying? You do whatever Norman did to prolong his life until you're sure. He's acting like he's got 15 hours to live or something.
Yeah,
Because he's so desperate. I just don't buy. I just don't buy that. And I feel like it's doing that in order to manufacture some drama so that he can have a reason to hate Spider-Man, which is the reason that I alluded to that I alluded to Harry Osborn in the other movies, because it kind of has that too.
Yeah, and I think another problem is too, like Spider-Man doesn't explain to Harry why he won't give him his blood in the first place either.
No, yeah, I agree with that. Sure. He just said, oh, he just says, oh, it's too dangerous, which frankly should be enough. But the problem is Harry thinks, okay, you have an ulterior motive, and that's what's supposed to parallel him with Max, because they both think they're being played by Spider-Man. But again, I feel like the script is making these characters kind of make leaps just so that they can have vendettas against Spider-Man. Almost works with Max better because he's deluded. Harry Osborn doesn't really yet have that excuse.
It would almost make more sense for him to figure out that Peter is Spider-Man before he becomes the Goblin and everything. That would give him a reason to hate Spider-Man much more once we get, and why he would kill Gwen once we get to the clock tower. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's really rushed. So now we're to another convenient elevator scene,
Yes.
and this scene exists, and it irritates me. And real quick, let me tell you why. Because that scene exists. Oh, I'm sorry. Real quick, Ravencroft is the Pentagon. I don't know why that is,
Yeah, that's very
but
strange.
anyway, so they have. So they have her and Harry meet in an elevator just so that he's seen her once, so that when he sees Spider-Man with her at the end, he can put two and two together. That's the only reason we have that scene at all.
Mm-hmm.
And what irritates me about it is he says, now to be fair, he's only been back in the States for a little while, but he's like, oh, I didn't even know that she worked for me. And then just happens to meet her in an elevator randomly with nobody else around. And more than that, it draws a ton of attention to how incredibly convenient it is, because as they're riding in that elevator, you see this huge, expansive building that looks like it has 1,500 people working in it.
Yeah, that's true.
And frankly, that's the reason I even thought of it. Okay, is this guy the main doctor guy that works at Ravencroft in the comics?
Did they say his name?
I don't remember, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it. Because I was like, is there a German scientist that works for Ravencroft in the comics?
I can't remember.
I just couldn't remember. I thought maybe you'd
I
know.
can't remember either. It's cool that they
It's
put.
such a kind of over the top sort of accent that I sort of figured they were trying to create a comic book character. But then again, they didn't do it with Smythe.
Yeah.
That kind of makes me a little sad. I don't love that we have an American Smythe just because I like Smythe and I kind of wish he was still British. But
Uh-huh. Um, I do like
but
that.
that's just a
I do like.
that's just a fan
Yeah,
thing. It's
I
not a
do
big
like
deal.
that they put Ravencroft in the movie, though. I think that's pretty cool.
Me too. Well, anybody that's a big Spider-Man fan, I mean, if you see Arkham pre-Joker, you're gonna expect Joker,
Right.
right? If you see Ravencroft pre-Carnage, kind of gonna expect Carnage.
And Venom too, because you need Venom.
At least something with symbiotes.
Yeah.
We could do Carnage without Venom, but they won't do that.
No, they won't. And I'm hoping that Carnage is the villain for that Venom movie if it ever gets made at this point, and hopefully it's good.
Well, I think Carnage is a perfect character for this universe, and the reason I say that is because every villain practically, let me think. Well, besides the Rhino, there's not much to that guy, but every villain so far just goes totally insane, and then all of everything they do is justified by, oh well, he lost his mind now. Cletus Cassidy is that character. I mean,
He is.
well,
I think
like I guess it's more he was psychotic all along,
I
but yeah, I mean, like, if you want to do a world where you can have villains that don't need motivations that just kill people because they like killing, Carnage is your guy, man.
I think it would tonally conflict if you were to have Carnage in a Spider-Man movie with this tone, because you can't have Carnage straight up brutally murdering people like he does in the comics in this universe. I don't think. And
Even with this movie, you don't think? Because this movie gets a little bit more brutal than the last one. I don't even think brutal's the right word, but
yeah, I don't know. Like I can't see Carnage eviscerating people and writing Carnage rules and blood on the walls in this movie universe. But with Spider-Man, if you were to do a Venom solo movie, I think that would and make it a little bit more darker and more similar in tone to the first movie, but just more violent.
okay,
I could see that.
Dan, I'm right about it. That guy is a male version of Dr. Kafka.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
That is Kafka, and I don't remember if she was German or not, but that is Kafka. But they've made it a guy now. What's funny is her name was Ashley Kafka, and Ashley can be a guy's name, so they should leave it. They should leave him give him the same name,
Yeah, that would
because
be cool.
you like Ashley Wood, for instance. Like there are male Ashleys.
Yeah. I really like the scene with Peter and Aunt May. I think Sally Field and Garfield have the best chemistry they've ever had in the two movies so far in the scene.
This is her best scene. She tears it up. Now, the problem, of course, is that when she finally reveals the information that's supposed to hurt Peter Parker, it's a huge letdown.
Hmm.
I think. I remember in the theater being really underwhelmed by it. I was like, oh, that's the thing, that he apparently did stuff for money underhandedly, but we know that probably wasn't really it. Like, I feel like ultimately the whole mystery about his father is really underwhelming. And they try to make it less so by giving him a really cool laboratory inside of a streetcar.
The thing that I like about this scene is that it really confronts the maternal relationship that she feels like she has with Peter, and the relationship stuff between the two of them is why I like it so much.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I completely agree with you. The scene is great.
Yeah,
I just mean when we get that information, I'm like, oh, all right.
and I don't think it's all that underwhelming because it's like Peter puts his father on kind of a pedestal and feels like he left for reasons that were benevolent, and now she says, "Well, maybe your father was a guy that just did things for money, and wasn't as good of a man as the kind of pedestal that you put him on your entire life and you've thought about since you were a kid." I don't know. I think that kind of works.
It would work better, and I hate this because I like the opening scene, but it only works without the opening scene because we've seen him already. We know he's not that guy. Um, like I guess the problem is I want to be more with Peter Parker in the scene and be surprised like he is, but the problem is I know more than he does, so that's hard. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, the Richard Parker that's in the opening scene could still do underhanded things for money in the interest of the common good, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose so. But then, if it's still in the interest of the common good, it's hard to feel as bad about it, I
But where do you
guess.
draw that line, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
a, a, an interesting moral conundrum. Peter's kind of a guy that sometimes can see things a little bit in a black and white way, especially with a father figure that he holds up
and
this
there
pedestal.
is some moral ambiguity to him, but because they make the whole thing with his parents such a huge mystery at the beginning of the movie, at the beginning of the first movie. I guess I'm just watching this movie. I'm just saying the first time I
Hmm.
saw it, I guess I was just expecting to be blown away by whatever the secret was.
Right.
And I think ultimately they played it up so hard that that was impossible.
Mm.
I mean, like he would have had to have like you know been the Watcher or something. Like it would have had to have been something ridiculous to be super surprised by it. But I do really like because it's really kind of fun comic stuff. I really do like that she says he was the most normal guy ever. He took the D train every day from this time to this time, and then you go see the train.
That is
That's
cool, yeah.
that's that's pretty cool stuff. And then we get the dual identity parallel thing where his father had it first. You know,
And it's importantly the dual identity thing with President Roosevelt too, because you know the reason why he had that train station, right? They mentioned it in the movie is because President Roosevelt had polio, and during World War II, nobody knew that. He was confined to a wheelchair, but in public, he would always get propped up on a podium because he didn't want to look weak during wartime or during the Great Depression. He wanted to have the people see him as a strong leader. So
one what's
he has a
And what's fascinating about that is that that means probably, I may be leaping too much, but that means that possibly Richard Parker was in working with a guy who had this debilitating illness and trying to help cure him, was wishing that his boss was more like Roosevelt.
yes, that's true.
Maybe he picked Roosevelt because he reminded him of Norman Osborn.
That's an interesting. I didn't even think about it that way. That's really interesting. Yeah.
I'm glad I mean, we always do Spider-Man stuff together, but I mean, I'm really glad you and I talked about this watching it because I would have never known any of that Roosevelt stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy doing these too because it's always fun watching a Spider-Man movie, no matter how bad it is with you. Even Spider-Man 3 was fun.
This one, but let me reiterate, this one is not bad.
No, I don't think
This
so
one
either.
is flawed. It's got stuff. I think it's middle of the road for the Spider-Man movie. I think it's right smack dab in the middle.
I think so too.
I think Amazing Spider-Man is technically quite a bit better. Technically, I don't know that it's more entertaining than this. I don't know if I would say that.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite of them. And then Spider-Man 3 is not that great, and the original Spider-Man is somewhere in between all of that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think Spider-Man 2 is technically story-wise the best of all of them.
See, I still don't know if I can put it over Amazing in some of the character stuff
Mhm.
that's done between him and Gwen. But the problem is, it has a good third act, and Amazing Spider-Man does not have as good of a third act. So
Right.
there you go. It breaks down somewhere.
And the villain's not as good in Amazing Spider-Man as it is in Spider-Man 2, obviously. Dr. Octopus is awesome in Spider-Man 2.
So again, just him freaking out about this blood thing, I'm still just not buying it.
You kind of talking through with you made me think about it a little bit more, and I'm not so sure that as I don't think it's as ambiguous as I maybe thought it was. That like I thought maybe that there was just something missing from the movie that didn't communicate that to us properly. But yeah, it makes a
Well,
sense.
maybe so,
It makes
but
less
if
sense than
that's
I
the
thought it
case,
did.
just looking at the piece as
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
is, I don't understand why he's so desperate.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that like the fact that it was cut out of the movie justifies it or anything. It's
No,
definitely
I know
there.
you're not,
Um,
but I wish it was there
yeah,
because I don't get
yeah,
it.
exactly.
And then when he goes after Spider-Man at the end, it makes even less sense
Yes.
because he proves when he injects himself that it was a bad idea, and then he goes to get revenge on Spider-Man for not giving him the thing he shouldn't have taken. I don't know what's going
Yeah.
on.
And I wanted to know too in that last scene where Harry freaked out, both Harry Osborns have great taste in liquor. They both drink whiskey. And that's pretty awesome.
I wonder if they both drink the exact same kind of whiskey.
I don't know. It's got to be swanky whiskey because he's a rich guy. But I've
So I kind of like that Peter Parker being so caught up in his own stuff now, and I sympathize because it's crazy stuff, and there's a lot of it. He's dealing with just learning that his dad might not have been who he thought he was, and then what just happened with Harry Osborn and all of that. That all of a sudden he's finding himself in a place where he's dangerously close to accidentally acting kind of like Sam Raimi Peter Parker, or more Sam Raimi Peter Mary Jane maybe. I almost like Peter Jane. Mary Jane in just that whole I'm so consumed with myself that I can't look at anybody else and care, and everything's about me right now, and you've got to focus on. And then he very quickly goes, wait a minute, where am I? Almost as if in a dream or something. It's like for a second he lost perspective.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that Gwen is kind of so quick to move on from him and go to Oxford and move on with her life. It's unfortunate, but I like how level-headed and proactive she is, where she's like, I'm not going to let this, failed romance, ruin my life or anything.
Well, it's nice to see a couple of things. It's nice to see real people. I mean, and I'm not saying that everybody makes the right choices. I'm not even saying that that's necessary. Well, no, I think that was the right choice. But I'm just saying that a person that is like she is, that is so driven. Is going to have to make that choice at some point, and a lot of people do go the wrong way and make the wrong choice. But I'm just saying that it's nice that she makes a choice, and I buy that it's in her character. But also, it is nice to have good role models in movies sometimes.
Exactly.
It really is. And Gwen Stacy, I said this when I did my Amazing Spider-Man review. She is into this movie. Last movie and into this movie, I think one of, if not the best love interest in a superhero movie. I think maybe she is the best love interest in a superhero movie, and she is one of the best role models for girls I've ever seen. Don't let, I mean, it sucks because then you get to the end and she gets killed, and girls are probably like, well, maybe I shouldn't be Gwen Stacy. But I just mean in I'm not gonna let this relationship, this rocky relationship with my boyfriend, keep me from my dreams and from I'm on this great successful road. I'm not gonna screw it up. The thing is, we live in a day and age where how many people screw that up, and how many people go to college and have no idea what they even want. We had a girl who's very focused and very driven and knows what she wants, and it's not just because she's brilliant. I mean, that probably helps, but she's also just, she was raised that way.
Right.
Know what you want, have a plan, attack life. That's her whole philosophy in this. And I have to really appreciate a movie that tells young kids, especially girls, to live that way, to attack life. Don't make your whole life about some boy.
Right.
But also, secondly, that she doesn't just do it because she is this two-dimensional, altruistic, perfect 1938 kind of superhero character. I believe it. I believe she would do that.
You mentioned the fact that she wants to attack life and go after it, and I think it's an interesting parallel thinking that Harry came from the place that where Gwen is and didn't accomplish anything, where she's and didn't have a plan, and she went there for the same reason too. They both went to school. Harry didn't accomplish anything, and if Gwen went to that school, she would have conquered the world in her field, because that's just who she is and how she was raised.
I mean, except that it's in Europe, and that means that her life would have been horrible because
Right,
she's in a
right.
Spider-Man
Yes.
movie. But besides
Yeah.
that,
Besides the funny continuity bits from the comics, yes, of course.
I love that. Okay, this is another huge convenience. I don't like it. Just before these guys break in and kick Harry out, he just happens to have found the file amongst a whole bunch of different files about Max Dillon, who just happens to be the other, currently the only major superpowered villain in this, but that they're going to have, some similar character stuff that he can exploit and pretend like he's his friend. Too easy. Far too
Yeah,
easy.
I agree. It is. This guy with the balding hair here, I kind of hope that he's Adrian Toomes or the Vulture. I think they say his name at one point, and it's not Adrian Toomes. I can't really remember, but he looks like a Vulture kind of character, you know? And he kind of takes over the company from Harry. He's kind of a corporate Vulture.
Is he left alive
He is.
by the end of
He
this?
is.
Okay, I hope he sticks around because he's an actor I like. He played the first gentleman in seasons 7 and 8 of 24,
Oh, cool.
where we had a female president, and he was our first gentleman,
Huh.
and he's excellent. Well, actually, I'm sorry, season 7, because I mean I won't spoil anything, but he's just not in 8 for plot for story reasons. But yeah, he's in 7. Um, so yeah, I thought it was cool to see him in something else.
That is cool.
I did not care for the casting of Felicia Probably Hardy. That's her middle name, probably. Originally when I first saw this, and again, I guess I'm lightening up about a lot of things. She's got potential. I really, and I don't know this actress. A lot of people when I first said that were like, "What? That actress is great." Like, I've never seen her or anything. But the thing is, in this, I feel like she's got this kind of like understated, almost insecure thing. Like I've got to kind of bide my time and like look almost not present and stuff. Like I feel like she's downplaying everything really hard so that when she finally comes into her own and maybe even goes full tilt Black Cat, she's gonna be like a total presence and stuff, and you'd never see it coming.
Yeah.
Like I really think that's what they're trying to do with her.
I hope so. I have never really seen her anything either. I mean, she's certainly pretty enough to play Felicia Hardy, and that's a huge part of Felicia Hardy's character. She needs to be a stunner, you know. And I
Oh yeah,
and I think they
she's
cast
got
right
she's
at
got to
least on the
be.
looks. I think she looks really nice.
Absolutely. Because we don't get to see her act really,
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
do very much at all. But I really think that's part of the point. I think she's supposed to look like set dressing
Right.
at first, so that she can pop in and be like, oh wait a minute, she's like this amazing cat thief. Wouldn't it be cool if we found out that all along she's actually been going out and she's a cat thief, and if she already was doing all that stuff?
They'll,
Because the thing is that would be a decent alter ego
yes,
for
it
that
would.
character.
And it would be so funny if they did the thing from the animated series where when she turns into Black Cat, her hair changes white. It just mutates into white.
Well, one thing I like is that is they've, and I think they've done it on purpose. That is clearly a wig, and I get the sense that they on purpose went tried to make it really obvious that ain't her actual
Oh,
hair.
that's a good point. Yeah, I always thought her hair looked kind of weird. I hope that's what they're doing, and she really does have white hair under there, and she's insecure about it.
Now I would have always assumed it would go the other way, where she's naturally got black hair and then she puts on a white wig, but whatever.
Huh. I just hope they give her the white hair because that's like an iconic thing for that character.
The problem is, I don't think if they give her anything like the Black Cat costume, it doesn't look very good without the black and white contrast.
Exactly.
And also that's part of the point of that character is that kind of like Catwoman, she straddles the fence, so you have black and white in the costume.
Right.
I mean, I always thought that.
No, I
So
agree.
now she's got to have white somewhere in that costume because it plays with the ambiguity of the character.
No, they'll just give her a gray costume.
It could work, but
No, that would not be cool.
there are gray cats.
I'm the gray alley cat.
It is kind of neat that the big final hurrah here of giving us the rest of this thing with his dad is we get to see that video he made, that we saw him sit down twice in two separate scenes playing the same scene.
Mm.
It's like, what is the video? And finally they show you the video.
It's funny that that old monitor has like the current Sony logo on it. I'd like to look up and know if Sony made monitors that old.
That's a really good point. But you can't really begrudge them
No,
that.
you can't. You
I mean,
can't.
it's their movie. They make hardware and they make
Oh yeah,
they
it didn't take
monitors.
me out or anything. It's kind of like the same thing in House of Cards where everyone's using iPhones all the time. You're like, clearly Apple paid them to do that, but it's whatever.
Actually, I think Sony did make monitors like that.
Did they? Okay.
I think I'll see if I can
No, I
find
mean,
anything on it.
I
I,
know nothing about branded computer monitors, so you could be right.
it is cool that it's at least a late '80s, early '90s looking
It
computer.
is. It is. I remember having one of those in my house as a kid. The first computer we got. monitors like that.
I still have a couple.
Yeah.
I'm an old person now.
It's cool that we're kind of having this revelation about Peter's father come about at the same time that um, Harry's getting so desperate trying to deal with the legacy of his father. If that made sense, it would have been in good parallel in the film. I think, I think those two events are happening at the same time deliberately.
I agree with you. Sony definitely had TVs back then,
Oh, cool.
but I'm not sure about monitors. Well, anyway, this is a silly thing to spend this much time on. I like the line when Richard Parker says, people will call me a monster for what I've done, and maybe they're right. I like that. It's not that he's like there is some ambiguity. There is a little bit of a Frankenstein thing going on here, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like maybe I pushed science farther than I should have because we're just not ready for it yet. Where it isn't okay. I got framed, but I was actually perfect in everything I
Right,
did. But I
exactly.
like that the movie is not playing it like we shouldn't question some of what he was doing. Keep in mind, without Richard Parker, there would have been no Lizard.
There wouldn't have been a Norman Osborn. There wouldn't have been an Oscorp at its current stage, as powerful as it is.
Yeah, and look what they're about to do with Sinister Six. I
Exactly.
mean, he is partially to blame for all of that. And keep in mind that that's a Spider-Man thing, right? That Peter Parker is somewhat becoming his father because he is going to, throughout his career, do things that he did for, at the time, what he thought were the right reasons. And, he had good intentions, and it blew up in his face, and Spider-Man has a huge history of creating his own
Oh
supervillains
yeah, of
and stuff
course.
like that. His father was doing it before him. So you've got that, and you've got the dual identity thing. His father was, in certain ways, kind of Spider-Man. He wasn't Spider-Man, but you know what I
No,
mean. And I
definitely.
like that they're playing it with science. And I've always said that, yay for Peter Parker actually doing science stuff in this. They've gone full tilt with that in having him and his father and Oscorp being so irrevocably linked.
Right, and that's another thing that I like that they took from a Spectacular Spider-Man is Norman Osborn and Oscorp are responsible for creating Spider-Man's entire Rogues Gallery. Not for the same exact reasons, but that's an idea taken from that animated series, which is very cool.
And both Peter and his father are somewhat kind of responsible for that.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the thing is, if Peter got bit by the spider but laid low and was never Spider-Man, would any of this stuff happen?
That's true. It brings to mind the
You wouldn't have Electro.
no, you wouldn't. It brings to mind the story arc that's like a full season of the 94 animated series that's like Sins of the Father part XIVX.
I don't think XIVX is a number. I don't think you can put a 10 after
I'm
a
just
5.
exaggerating, but it's like I just thought that was so funny that they used Roman numerals and they got like so high in the episode count that it looked ridiculous at some points.
You, you just said 14 and 10.
Yeah, see, I'm exaggerating.
That's no, I know, but that just cracked me up. Okay, so this is the thing that I think probably made people say Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, this is
I'm
straight out
not
of like
sure.
the when in Watchmen he comes
Right
out
on
of the
Watch.
closet and he's reforming his nervous system and everything.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think that I'm not even sure people are complaining so much that the design is too Watchmen. I think maybe it was just the way they shot
Oh
that,
yeah, that's fair.
and that is fair. Plus, the way they're even playing the music in this scene reminds me a little bit of that scene, man. I mean, like it's a little derivative. I don't know if it's. I mean, I don't know if they were really thinking it, but they had to have been.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. We something we haven't talked about yet is the Sinister Six numbers, and we'll see them a little bit later. But early on, we've already seen with I forget which one it was. We saw a 7, and I think it was the Green Goblin stuff, but I can't remember. You would expect there just be 6 projects, but there's actually 7, and one of them is the spiders. I didn't notice that until this last viewing, but there's actually 7 projects, and number 4 is the spiders. And then all the other numbers are the other things that will eventually become the Sinister Six. I think that's kind of
So
interesting.
I would imagine that the spider thing is either a reference to, Spider-Man himself or, Venom, because you have to have the spider powers with Venom somehow.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's really a reference to anything they'll do later. I think it's just a story thing of these were all experiments that they were working on to try to come up with something to help Norman Osborn stay alive.
Right. And there,
Is my assumption, and we know they were working on the spider, so the spider was one of I don't know the significance of the numbers because the spider, it seems like that ought to be first.
yeah,
I don't know,
it,
but it's number 4, so that might be completely arbitrary. I don't know how a giant rhino mech suit helps keep you alive, or
that's
wings, or
true.
like I'm not. I'm making the assumption that because the spiders are in there, those were all projects meant for Norman Osborn staying alive. Just because isn't that the point of this entire company?
Yeah,
I like. So I'm not sure how some of that. I don't know. Octopus arms help keep you alive, but
that's true. I mean, it would be kind of cool if you were going to do Kraven the Hunter in a future movie, because you know, a thing with Kraven is sometimes he'll team up with Spider-Man initially if their goals are mutual in some adaptations where like he gets hired to kill all of the animal-based projects that Norman Osborn created, and Spider-Man is one of them, and that's why he goes after them. I think that would be a pretty cool thing.
that's a good point because it's not Oscorp. It's that starts all that at the end. It's Harry.
Right, exactly. And I love Dane DeHaan in this scene, by the way. He's hilarious.
Yeah,
He's
it is pretty funny. He does really good menacing stuff. I like it. And again, I don't find his character unsympathetic exactly. I just don't understand why he's so desperate. So it hurts it a little bit. Like if they can make me believe that, I buy everything else he does, except for when he becomes the Green Goblin, and then you can dismiss all of that by now he's a crazy person,
right.
which is exactly what we did with the lizard.
I think
Once again, look at the catacomb pattern. It's even on the floor.
oh yeah.
It's on the floor.
I think
And it's in the windows. Well, I mean, we know it's in the windows,
right.
but it's cool to see it from the inside. That's fun.
Dane DeHaan already has like a goblin. His face already kind of looks like the Green Goblin mask in the comics, like the way the ears protrude and stuff. I don't know. Like I think,
That has to be why they
yeah.
cast him.
Thankfully, he's a good actor
I
too.
I think he's great. Yeah. And I do think moving on, uh, he's he's got the potential to be a really good, ongoing Green Goblin.
I think so too, and I think they have the potential to mutate his condition even further too, so he looks even more like comic book Green Goblin moving forward. Because we know Norman's disease gets worse, and he gets full-on green skin in the Ultimate Goblin hands. So he could look better than he does in this movie eventually.
So everybody made fun of Arrhenius Oscorpus. It's pretty freaking
Yeah,
funny. And that is a very Orty and Kurtzman kind of thing to do. It seems like nothing is beneath those guys. Like if it sounds super crazy silly to me, they're gonna think that it's super 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 clever. They love puns and things. That's not a pun, but that's really good. Now, to be fair, it's not like that's a thing they found in nature and it just happened to be called that. They made that name up, of
right.
course. They created a thing, the spider, and then they called it that. But Oscorpus, that's I don't know. That's really funny.
I think Norman Osborn is a like he's a self-centered enough person. He's egotistical enough that he would name an entire species of spider after himself. I could buy that.
Well, after himself, yeah, but to have a species of a spider named after your business, that's what's funny. I've never heard of anything like that where it's named after the
Well, the
business.
business is named after him, and that's what he was all
I know,
about,
but
right?
having the word corp inside of that is really funny to me.
I guess.
That would be like if you had a bat that was like Wayne Corpus.
Well,
I
Batman
mean,
does
really, it just
brand
sounds
everything.
hilarious. Yes, he does. Yeah, yes, or like Wayne Enterprise Corpus.
There was even
Corpus.
a thing called Batman Incorporated.
Yeah, I know, Dan. No, I've actually read it.
Me too.
Oh, okay. I thought you didn't read it. Okay.
And I this suit is weird. It's like a healing suit apparently too.
Yeah, that's strange. I mean, again, it kind of, but see, look at Seven.
Yeah.
But I think, I think that makes a little bit of sense because that goes into what I was saying earlier, where these things had to have been like made to try to help keep him alive. But uh, like so he gets bit by the spider, and then automatically it makes him go to that one.
Mhm.
Why that one? Exactly. Except that we've got to rush this along and make him the Green Goblin super fast. You know what I mean? Like what is it about getting that makes him go, now I need a glider? I, I'm not real sure what's going on
Yeah, me
there.
either. I mean, maybe Harry's favorite color is green. Who knows? I don't know.
But it really, but don't you think that the scene kind of plays it like something about the serum? The serum goes with that suit, but why? Because it's apparently the same thing that Peter Parker got bit by. Like, isn't the idea that he injects himself, and because of the illness he has, combined with the fact that he's not a Parker, is why it turns him into that,
Right.
right? What does that have to do with that
I
suit?
don't know. And more
Oh,
importantly,
okay, so the answer is nothing.
and more importantly, why does that healing suit heal his condition enough that he's not desperate anymore when it didn't work on Norman Osborn?
Maybe because the stuff in him like it doesn't work perfectly, but it helps
But
combined with
but you got
that.
to assume that Norman injected himself with that stuff too, right?
Maybe he didn't think to inject himself and put that suit on.
They just built the suit and he died before he got a chance to try it on.
They have no idea that they actually have the right formula, but the winning formula is a combination.
You know what they need to do in this situation, Cap? They need to go back to formula. That's what they need to
They need to
do.
go back to formula. Yeah,
All kidding
yeah.
aside, this scene is awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And Gwen's wearing the exact outfit she wears in the comic books when she dies.
Oh, that's true. Which is it's cool they pull it off because it doesn't look too
It
60s.
doesn't. And it's kind of
Or I guess
unfortunate.
what, 70s
Yeah, it's kind of
actually.
it was in the 70s when she died. It's kind of unfortunate for me as a comic book fan. I mean, I kind of they projected it all over the trailers, but when I saw the first one and I saw her like in that outfit, I'm like, well, it's a foregone conclusion now, you know?
I really like that line when when he says they got crime there and they never caught Jack the Ripper.
Yeah. I like
I
that
think that's pretty funny. You've always told me, Dan, that you like all this relationship stuff, and that you didn't think that any of the of the kind of banter between them ever went too far. The first time I saw it, I thought some of it like lingered a little too long. Again, this last time I saw it, it all worked for me, with maybe the exception of the scene where she's trying to get into the college, and that was awkward on purpose, and I think maybe I just didn't like how awkward it was. I don't
Right.
know, but like that's the only even remote except that scene right there in the theater. I wasn't sure about it. I don't know. It works now.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the reason I like this movie so much is because all of the stuff that ties the movie together is the relationship, and it works really well. Um, some of the villain plot doesn't really work, but all this the character arc that's central to the movie, which is Peter and Gwen's, works perfectly, I think.
I also like that when he when he finally comes around and decides he's going to go live with her in Europe, and that he's going to keep being Spider-Man, and that he's finally going to ignore what her father said, and they're going to live their lives on their own terms. He still doesn't have like a complete 360 kind of or 180 kind of shift. Like he's still trying to protect her. He still wants to keep her out of danger.
Right.
He's not suddenly a different character because he's had his obligatory character arc and now he's exactly what he's supposed to be. No, and importantly, it's still more complicated than that. I don't mean that. Yay, he's still flawed.
Right.
I mean, yay, he still does what I would probably do. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
And something I want to mention about the relationship stuff too is Mark Webb has a co-writing credit on this movie with Orsi and Kurtzman, I believe. And I think Webb most likely had more to do with the stuff that works in this movie, the relationship stuff, than the villain stuff. I would think.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and you know what's funny about that though is that a lot of the villain stuff in the first movie doesn't work real great either. So
Yeah, but I don't. He didn't
he might
write.
have had something to do with both of that. Like he didn't write that. I know that, but you'd think you're directing a piece like this and you're kind of in charge, and you'd be like, yeah, this doesn't work. We should change this. Um,
But I think he also had the same kind of problem that Sam Raimi did with Spider-Man 3, even to a larger degree here, where like they wanted to set up a cohesive, well, maybe not at this point cohesive, but they wanted to plant the seeds for for a Spider-Man universe they could spin off things with. So they need to put a lot of characters in here, stuff them in, and I think he pulled stuffing all these characters into a movie much better than Raimi did. I mean, this has the same amount of villains as Spider-Man 3, and it works a lot better.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it doesn't still have some of the same problems, but not anything like to the same degree. And certainly doesn't have the same kind of motivation problems where, I look at Sandman and I'm like, you're trying really hard to tug at my heartstrings, but you're just not tugging hard
Yeah,
enough, I
exactly.
guess.
I'm not a bad
I look
person.
at
Yes,
this.
you are.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, it's okay for me to break the law. But I look at this and I'm like, no, Harry Osborn, there's some real pathos there. He's insane before he's insane, but there's some real pathos
Huh.
there.
Did you mean Electro?
No, I know. I mean,
Oh, okay.
Harry.
Oh, okay.
In that he's, again, like I said before, I don't mean to be a broken record, but he's still way too insanely desperate, and then makes it all about revenge suddenly. So he's insane before he's insane.
That's true. And there's the clock thing. We saw the stopwatch on the plane, which is a
Yeah.
callback to Richard Parker. Richard Parker looking at his watch, I think, before they get on the plane at the beginning of the movie. Do you like the final Electro costume suit kind of thing here? What do you think about it?
Oh, I think it looks okay. I mean, it's really goofy, but yeah, I mean, in an okay kind of comic way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it came kind of out of nowhere. Like when I first saw it, I was like, really? He's got a suit already? And like, I know it was probably something kind of pre-existing, but like, why does it? How did they have time to put lightning bolts on the sides of it?
I,
Like, you can't tell me that they just had this suit laying around where like that was like the eighth Sinister Six thing or something. It was like, just in case somebody gets lightning powers, we're gonna put lightning bolts on the side of it. I don't know, like even if I can sort of buy the suit, but second of all, I don't think he needed a suit. Like, it looks okay, but like, why couldn't we have just made his powers, the whole blue thing, the suit?
I
I
agree.
don't know why. I mean, like, maybe it doesn't have to be like Doctor Manhattan. You could give him maybe some like unflammable underwear or something, but like, I don't mean he has to not wear any clothes, but like, does he need a full blown costume necessarily? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Honestly, I wonder if they weren't thinking, every time somebody does that, it looks terrible as an action figure.
That's true. See, the villains in this movie franchise in general, I think all have costume problems. Like with the first one, the lizard wears his lab coat for all of 3 seconds, and that upsets me. And,
Yeah, me too. Because the thing is, you could almost forgive the snout thing if he would just wear the lab coat.
see, and I don't even mind the no snout thing because it looks like the Ditko lizard, which I thought.
I know, and you've always said that, but I didn't even know about that, and I still don't like it.
Oh, that's
Like,
fair. I mean, the snout would have been cool, but
well, my complaint about the snout, this has nothing to do with this movie, but I'm gonna say it anyway. My big complaint with the snout was the reason that they did it was because they wanted him to be able to talk. Why does the lizard have to talk?
yeah, I mean,
Why does he have to talk? And then like why can't you just have him say like a couple? The thing is, he doesn't talk very much. So like why can't the lines he has just be when he's not on screen? I don't really understand why you have to change the whole design. Because they wanted to do this now. They're like, well, he can't talk. He hardly ever says anything. Why? Why? What's the deal there? Whatever. This is really important. That this is my choice, and here in a minute she's going to get killed. That is extremely important. She is responsible for what happens to her.
yeah, and she's directly responsible for Peter even being able to fight Electro in the first place and beat him. Like that webbing scene he
That's right.
shot, he would probably would have died if it wasn't for her.
And in that case, it's a much more heroic kind of thing because she does actually sacrifice herself for him and kind of for everybody. That's different than what happened with the Gwen Stacy death in the comics, where it was more of just, this is really sad and tragic.
Right.
She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time in that.
I think this movie is subverting superhero movie tropes in a different way than the original story subverted superhero tropes in the comics, but I think it has the same sort of effect. Because we
Yes,
haven't seen
absolutely.
love interests do anything like this in superhero movies before, I don't think.
We have not with the sacrifice. I mean, you had things like the end of Iron Man. Pepper Potts is kind of integral to helping to stop the bad guy. So
Right.
we have some stuff where the female love interest in a male driven superhero movie is actually important and integral and isn't just set dressing, and isn't just always kidnapped. But in this, and I also like that there's not a kidnapping that happens first. He grabs her and then she's dead.
Right.
Um, but in this, it's no, I'm as capable as you are, and I don't care that I don't have superpowers. And I also don't think that it's trying to be irritatingly progressive. I don't think it's saying, okay, you don't expect this, so you're going to be impressed with us for doing this. I don't think it's trying to make like a big kind of gender role argument. I think it is a really good argument, but I don't think it's trying necessarily to do that. I think it's just when she says nobody controls me, nobody can live my life for me and all of that, she's not saying you're being a womanizer, Peter Parker, let me do what I want to.
Right.
She's saying even though I don't have superpowers, I really think it's a superpowered versus non-superpowered thing before it's a male versus female thing.
Yes, agreed. And that's something that's been touched on, I think, in one of the um if I remember correctly, in one of the Raimi movies before, where they talk about like, the firefighters and stuff being just as heroic as Spider-Man,
Yeah.
but this is just, firefighters are regular people in that they don't have superpowers, but Gwen Stacy's not even in a position where she is obligated to sacrifice herself for anybody else. She just does it because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I think that vaguely, well, and because great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
The idea there is with she's got that knowledge, and she's the only she's got to partner up with Spider-Man because she has ideas he doesn't have, and so she's doing the same thing that he's doing, just with knowledge instead of superpowers.
Right, exactly.
And I think there's a vague notion in this. Maybe it's not real at the forefront. But there's I think a vague notion in this of Spider-Man is in danger of getting out of touch, and maybe that's a little bit of a of kind of a contrast with Electro and kind of a parallel there, where he thinks he's so important that he has to solve everything now.
Hmm.
Like the world can't get along without him, and he has to be reminded that he needs help and that he is really important, but other people also really matter, and so he can't just like take the whole role on his shoulders. It's not all his responsibility, but more importantly, he also can't control people
Right,
because
exactly.
that's what the bad guys do. That's when you start dehumanizing people, and so I think that's what she's all about in this.
That's a very good point. And see when
Oscorp power
yes.
with a P with one P.
See, and we had discussed, I forget if this was off or on camera or recording, that I kind of needed the Green Goblin to kill Gwen Stacy in this franchise. And as rush as this is, I do appreciate that they did bring a Green Goblin in at the end to kill Gwen. Because I don't know, like to have Electro kill Gwen Stacy, that wouldn't do it for me, you know?
No, I can completely agree with that, and also I don't think Electro could be. I mean, I still don't think he's as superfluous as I did the first time I saw it. But I'm not saying Harry Osborn is superfluous. I'm not
Right.
saying that. I think he's the one you've got to have. By the way, there's the obligatory Star Trek reference. Um, really, we got to have 1701 on the back of that. It's like, yes, okay, fine, we get it, Orsi and Kurtzman. You guys wrote Darkness. Okay, fine. See, they think stuff like that is super, super clever, and I'm like, maybe it's just because I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm like, that's really obvious. Can you do something a little more subtle than that? Slightly.
See, now when I go see Star Trek 3, I'll be looking for Spider-Man references and I'll be happy when I see them.
Well, don't look. You won't have to. It'll be so blatant.
Kirk will
If you're wearing 3D glasses, it'll punch you in the face, literally.
Scotty will have like a pet spider or something.
It's interesting how he's getting really animalistic in this role, and I mean like he's kind of a goblin, and a goblin's not really an animal, but he's doing all this weird like lip licking stuff and all that.
Yeah, it's sadistic. And I think it's a step. This costume, at least, I think the Willem Dafoe costume looks a little bit better aesthetically than the one in this movie, and especially better than the snowboard. I don't think there's any argument there. But like, um, I think it's better to have his face free to give him a performance at the very least, you know?
I
Because like
completely see what you say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I would say that the original Green Goblin costume looks a lot better at a distance.
yes, and I'm one of the people that doesn't hate the design of that costume. Like I think it's
But
okay.
it looks so plastic. Like I can at least say that looking at this, it kind of looks like it's metallic.
Right.
Um,
But
but I
Willem Dafoe looks scarier without the mask on in the scenes where he's just Norman Osborn
yeah.
talking to himself.
Well, that's why Weird Al wrote that in the lyric.
Oh, did he?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's funny.
Well, he's wearing that dumb Power Ranger mask, but he's scarier without it on.
Well, he wasn't wrong. And here we go, Spider-Man trying to stop time.
Oh, yeah, good call. And you can't do that. You can't stop time. We're all gonna die. But again, importantly, she could have prolonged her life by not making the choices she did, but at what cost?
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's important that she doesn't just die because she's reckless.
Right.
You know, she dies because she makes choices that actually are necessary for, well, just remaining a human being that cares about people. Really, I mean, like what choice did she have ultimately? That's you know, and I mean, like you could say, well, if she decided to just not be with Spider-Man anymore, that she wouldn't have been in that situation, and that it wouldn't have been her responsibility. So to a degree, it is that she chose the harder path, the more adventurous path, and ultimately she's not better for it, but everybody else is.
Right.
And what happens? What happens to all the people in this franchise that try to prolong their lives? Well, they actually all stay alive. Isn't it really interesting that the villains in this don't die?
Yeah.
Most of the time, the villains in this don't die. They stick around,
But they're
and they make
broken. They
the
lose their
world
humanity.
worse. They lose their humanity, and then they continue to make the world even worse.
Exactly.
I think that's really important, and I think once
so
again,
too.
somewhat subverting superhero tropes, right?
Yeah,
That like
definitely.
we are keeping villains alive, and for a reason, because it's about that idea of living versus being alive
Yeah, see, I think
versus surviving.
yeah, exactly. I think this franchise has a lot more going on in it ideal-wise than people give it credit for sometimes, but that's just me and you, I guess.
And it's not just us, but like, and understand, I get why the reasons that people are not liking these as much as we are. I get that there's some weird, kind of tonal stuff and I
And
can
yeah,
understand an argument of I can understand an argument of sometimes it doesn't seem to really know what it wants to be and stuff like that. Although I don't feel that way as much as other people do. And I get taste stuff, you know. I get the prevailing thing seems to continue to be the Raimi movies weren't broken, even though 3 wasn't that good. We could have continued on and made better movies. Why did we have to reboot so fast? And I really think that a lot of people continue to just be really hard on these simply because it's not what they want.
and I don't know, like the Raimi movies, as fun as they are, and I like them, and they're a big part of my childhood. These movies are kind of much more in line with the Spider-Man that I like, and that's why I enjoy them. So
I also think that despite their flaws, they're a little more
yeah,
sophisticated.
I think so
And
too.
I know not everybody's going to agree with me on that, but I don't know. Like at least character wise, at least emotionally, and they emotionally resonate with me more. And there are stuff that there's a lot of stuff I don't like about them, um, but I don't know. I seem to care more about the people involved, and I feel like it's less soap opera, like bad soap
Right.
opera,
Yeah, because
melodramatic,
Spider-Man's
but
always gonna
trying to
kind
be
of be
realistic.
that to some degree. Anything written by Stan Lee is gonna be like that to some degree, right?
Well, and you know, a lot of time when we talk about X-Men, we talk about Claremont stuff, and so we use the word soap opera almost with reverence, you know.
Right,
So I mean,
exactly.
like yeah, there is something, but what I mean is like melodramatic, but trying to make me think that it isn't. You know, I don't think it's doing that, and I think that the Raimi films, to a degree, had that.
Right. And here we have the break where there was an alternate ending film, and you can watch it on the Blu-ray disc, where Richard Parker comes and talks to Peter at the graves here, and he's still alive, which is interesting. I don't know where that would have went in the future.
Wow. I didn't know about that. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the features yet. Um, Goodness. It maybe would have. I'm kind of glad they left it out.
me too.
And the thing is, they could keep him alive and still do something with him in the third one, but that's maybe not the place to introduce that, right? Like I'm thinking, wouldn't it have undercut that scene? Like I think we all kind of want that to breathe and not have more story right now. You know, I think we want to feel bad about her death, and then let you know the Sinister Six setup thing happen, and then that's the movie. I really don't think you want to do a lot more. And I know we get Rhino and stuff, but that's not really plot stuff. That's more giving us a finality to this movie and having a resolution to the ideas. And okay, he's gonna keep being Spider-Man. You know what I mean? You couldn't have left it just right with that. You couldn't have had, oh, she's dead, and then credits.
Right. I think it would have undercut the sort of things we've been talking about, the ideas of someone knowing when their time is up and dying and being okay with the legacy that they've left. Like if Richard Parker's still alive, if he survived a plane crash, he had to have done something to himself to preserve his life to some degree, right?
That's a good point. And then what these movies like to say is that if you put yourself and your survival above all else, you make you're making choices where the cost is too great. And then he would be I think more morally ambiguous than we would want him to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But if they had that scene, I let's not be surprised if he's not alive in three.
Yeah, that's true. I do like that this little kid looks like Peter Parker from the original comics with the glasses and everything, and his hair
Yeah.
formed like that. That was-
But you see what I mean? The webbing is still
yeah.
there. Like, how does that work? It's
I
been
don't
like a
know.
week or something or more. I don't know.
The city cleanup must hate Spider-Man. Like that. That's J. Jonah Jameson's base that he can rile up.
Yeah, it's not even about property damage. It's about vandalizing
That's
things.
how J. Jonah Jameson radicalizes his base and becomes mayor and gets people to vote for him. He's like, "City cleaners unite!"
And then and then the opposite argument is no, Spider-Man's creating jobs.
Oh yeah, that's true. Spider-Man's the job creator,
That's right. That's right. We've had to hire 600% more city workers.
but he's also
I
the city
mean,
go bankrupt.
do you know how much money it takes to have that many guys climb up that high on skyrises all the time
Yeah, I mean,
to get all that
I mean,
webbing?
we already saw Electro like level. What was that? Times Square there at the beginning of the movie. Like
Yeah,
you saw like half of buildings coming down and like crashing
I
in the
know.
street.
That's over the top, man. Because it's like that early in the movie we have decimated Times Square, and then like the world just moves on and nobody talks
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
I think that's pretty funny. It's like it feels like the apocalypse for about 4.5 minutes.
It's interesting, and
What
I like it too that they bookend both of these movies with speeches too. The Uncle Ben
I was
voicemail
gonna
and the.
I was gonna say
Oh,
that
okay.
just for the record. I also picked up on that. No, I was gonna say that too. And yeah, that's another thing where they're reflecting something that happened in the last movie, and this time though it's not as different. Well, it's Peter Parker learning a new lesson. It's not great power anymore. Now he's learning something different, but it is somebody who's died and that he's mourning. The difference is before it was, well, actually, you know what? Both of them are lessons that he refused to listen to at first.
Hmm.
and then came to realize they were right about it.
Because Gwen's whole thing is like Peter has to learn where to draw the line, where are the limits of his power, where can he exert his power responsibly. And Uncle Ben was like, you have this power, you have to use it responsibly.
But it's also, see, the first one is the whole great power, great responsibility thing is also you have to put that responsibility above your personal
Right.
life. And what he's learned in this is that despite the risk, you have to have a personal life. Like you have to find that balance.
Yes, and that's what
Or
Spider-Man's
at
all
least
about.
that's what she's saying. And so I mean, like, it's interesting that like when he takes the costume off and he doesn't go out and be Spider-Man, he's also not being anything, right?
Right.
Like he's nothing at that point. He's also not going to have a personal life either. So it's like he has to be Spider-Man. I think by the end, what happens is Spider-Man and Peter Parker are synonymous. You can't have one without the other.
And yeah,
And
he has to be Spider-Man to move on, to endure, keep
yeah,
going. And that's why I love the ending of this movie so much. This is one of my favorite endings to a Spider-Man movie.
this is one of my favorite endings to a superhero movie. I really like it. And the only thing, and I've said this before, but the only thing that really hurt it was that I'd already freaking seen it in the trailers.
Yeah.
It just hurts my
Yeah,
feelings.
they show you the last
That like
shot of the movie in the trailer.
the last shot of the movie in the trailers. I think this was some of the most abysmal advertising for a movie I've ever seen because it was so overblown. We've seen it go the other way where there's just not enough advertising. For this, it was I felt like I'd seen the movie already,
I think the
and
advertising,
I think that hurt it.
yeah.
I think it hurt it really bad because this is the least grossing Spider-Man movie so far, which is interesting because it still made $700 million, but it's the least grossing of them.
Really?
Yeah, and I think part of it was because it was in everybody's faces, and it's like they were pretending like we'd never seen Spider-Man web sling in live action before. It's like, guys, this is the fifth movie. You got to sell it on something else, and you got to not have it on our face. Compare that to, say, First Class or even Days of Future Past. Pretty understated advertising. There was quite a bit of it. You saw it, but like they didn't put too much in front of your face. They didn't show you too much. You knew about it, but you were curious. It was mysterious. With this, it was like they wanted to give you a preview of the entire movie before whatever movie you were watching.
Yeah, I think the advertising for both of these movies has been pretty bad. Like, there's scenes in the trailers that were cut out and aren't in the movies. They showed you a lot of things. I don't know. Whoever cuts the trailers for these movies at Sony, I don't think does a very good job.
So this really is kind of the culmination of a lot of these ideas. You got this kid that has um, that has kind of taken this message of hope from Spider-Man, and interestingly, it's also a combination of that and the message Gwen Stacy had, which is take risks.
Yeah, exactly.
Do what you think is right. See, and remember what she said in the beginning of the movie, that speech. Stand up for what you think is right, and don't let anyone tell you who you are and what you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
And this kid runs away from his mom right out in the street. I mean, it's now I will say it's contrived because it's like, what would have happened if Spider-Man hadn't happened to show up here? Like this is the one time he finally goes, oh, I'm going to show up,
Yeah.
But I like. So I mean, the setup is silly, but I like what it's saying.
I do too. And going up against the Rhino for Spider-Man, it looks like almost impossible odds too, right? Like
Yeah,
a guy in a extremely powerful mech suit with rockets and machine guns. He's just as a formidable foe as Electro, just in a different way.
yeah, and I mean, like he has to use his surroundings. He has to, he's got that manhole cover, so he's got to be um, um,
Resourceful. Yeah.
resourceful. Thank you. Anyway,
That was a fun movie to watch, wasn't it? I had a good time.
I'm liking it a little more
Yeah.
every time I'm seeing it. That blood thing still drives me
Oh
insane.
no, I'm with you. It made even less sense than I thought it did, and I'm with you. It didn't make sense all of the other times I watched it, but it makes
Well,
even less
understand
sense now
I
that we talked about it.
well understand I didn't want to change your mind. I was hoping you
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
something I didn't see.
exactly.
Okay, you said something to me before we started recording that I want to bring up. You said this movie is long but doesn't feel it. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and You said it moves at a pretty good clip, and you don't feel like it's that long. And I disagreed with you. And this time, maybe it's just because we were talking, but yeah, it didn't feel that long.
Huh. I didn't feel like it dragged in any places where I was like, oh, we need to move on, and there wasn't at least something interesting going on the screen. And this is here where we see the hints of the Sinister Six,
Yep.
which is cool. Goblin Glider.
Well, of course, you're saying that having also presented the argument that you could about cut Electro from the film, like you're like I'm liking him more now, and you're still saying no, maybe it's kind of bloated. So like I think it's kind of interesting that you're like it doesn't feel too long, but then at the same time, yeah, it still could have been shorter, right? Like
Yeah, it could have been. I can find something to enjoy at least in Jamie Foxx's performance in the action scenes that Electro are in. You know what I mean? Like even when he's on screen, I'm not like, oh, this is completely unenjoyable, I suppose.
as we're looking at the credits, I mean it's a
Dr.
modern
Ashley
superhero movie, so
Cofton. They did keep the name.
they did keep the name. That's awesome. But while we're looking at this, of course, it's a modern superhero movie, so we still have plenty of time.
Oh yeah.
Let's discuss the future.
Sure.
We've got we know that there are probably going to be two, unless they change their minds on it. But they've greenlit allegedly two movies before we even get Amazing Spider-Man 3. This movie made, as I said earlier, the least amount of money of any of the Spider-Man movies. Is that a good move? Is that gonna kill it? And what happens to Amazing Spider-Man 3 depending on what those other two movies are? Go, Dan.
I think it might be a good idea to stave off for a little while and build the excitement to some degree. Um, I don't know, like it might be a bad decision just in the casting wise if you know Andrew Garfield looks too old by the time they get around to making the third one. Who knows? But I'm optimistic about the spin-off movies. I know I'm like the only one in the universe, but I think a Sinister Six movie can work. I think you can do the kind of anti-Avengers where it's like a heist movie about these bad people, and maybe the Spider-Man villains are the kind of guys where they're always intending to do good, but like Peter Parker, they get stuck in bad circumstances and they feel like they have to do evil to get out of them. I feel like that can be an interesting movie with an ensemble cast. I've seen it um, done before in other movies, heist movies and movies about criminals that are interesting. So I don't know. I think it can work. And the Venom movie kind of, that's a lot easier of a project. I think that can work. But I'm
Well, and of course they've said they're doing a female thing, and it's probably Black
yes,
Cat,
yes,
and I
that's
think
right.
that could work. Here's the thing. I think that I agree with you. I think it could work. I don't know if they can sell it. That's my worry. I mean, like there it's two things. The first is this movie was bashed pretty hard. And I mean, yeah, people there it's somewhat polarizing, but it's not polarizing like we've seen other movies. People seem to be more negative on it than positive. And I think that immediately hurts whatever comes after it, potentially.
Hmm.
The other thing is no matter how good of a movie it is, I don't trust these people to sell something so off the beaten path when they don't know how to sell Spider-Man.
That's
That
true.
that scares me. That scares me a little bit. What it's got a couple of huge things going for it, and the big one is characters that nobody's heard of. That's really in right now. Guardians proved that people want fresh things they don't know anything about. They want to be surprised. They don't want to have to no source material. They don't want to have to argue with geeks who say, "Oh, it's not as good as the comics." They want movies that come out that geeks don't even care what it is if it's good because they don't even know the source
Right.
material. And I think Sinister Six has a really good shot at being that. And it's not gonna be the same thing as Guardians because it will have characters that a lot of people know, but still some off the beaten path stuff for your standard movie going audience. So I
Right.
mean, it will potentially really have that going for it. But man, I think it's a scary business decision if they're going to have two movies because before Amazing Spider-Man 3. Because what if they bomb? What if they both bomb?
Yeah, that's an interesting prospect. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen if they're good. I mean, obviously, what if they come out with something that's bad? I don't think that it deserves to make a crap ton of money. But I mean, I'm just going to be really interested to see who they cast as the six and who the final roster ends up being. Um,
Yeah, me too.
Because I kind of want Doctor Octopus to be the head of it, and it seems like Green Goblin might be, but who knows?
It kind of feels like trying to figure out the final four, right? You know, I feel like a sports fan trying to figure out Sinister Six. Like, oh, who do you think it is? Let's make our brackets, Dan.
And some of the villains that they could potentially include, you got to save at least some of them for Amazing Spider-Man 3, unless you have him fight the Sinister Six in the third movie. I don't know what the plan is or what they're thinking.
I still don't know how you have a Sinister Six that does, villainous things and make the audience buy that Spider-Man never shows up in the movie.
That's true.
Like where do you put him? What are you gonna do with it? Or maybe he does. I mean, we don't know exactly what they're gonna do with it. But like, I do think you can do a supervillain movie and keep with the villains. I'm just saying they got to have some kind of opposition, right?
Right. I mean, maybe it could be the kind of thing where the whole movie is about them trying to escape Ravencroft. I mean, that sounds like it could be kind of boring, but I don't know. Who knows?
That's really interesting. Yeah. Oh, well, and a lot of people said, well, yeah, let's really flesh these characters out and then let them fight Spider-Man. And that's a good idea. It could even be a setup movie. You know, it
Right.
could be like doing what, six different character arcs, doing like six subplots, and then not having them converge until the third act.
That's
Like
true.
you know what you could do? They'll never do this, and I know that this is always my go-to. Make it a vignette
That
film.
would be cool.
Make it a vignette film. Give it, give Craven the Hunter a 25-minute short.
Oh,
You
I
know,
would eat
like
that up. I would love that. Craven's one of my favorite things.
that's why I said Craven.
I mean, I like all the Spider-Man villains, but Craven especially, I would like to see. Like, I can't wait to see Mysterio on the big screen. He's one of my favorites too. His powers are so cool. Um,
I hope they don't make him silly. I hope it's not quite the same thing as Electro. Like I think you can still do Mysterio and give him that same kind of theatrical, guy who is great at special effects background and not make him a
I
joke.
agree. Yeah. I mean, playing with people's perceptions, lying to them, deceit. That's kind of some of the things that are discussed in this movie. I think it would be a perfect kind
It's a
of
great point.
thematic thing to go to in the next movie.
I also hope that they eventually go for some more kind of minor and obscure villains as they're exploring the rogues and giving people their own movies. Like if we're gonna do Sony, be moved. Well, how about you present something to me and I'll decide if I'm moved. Yes, like don't make it like where everybody in the crowd stands up and applauds and I only stand up too because I feel peer pressure. Okay, that's a, but anyway, so I think it would be really cool. For instance, we get a Venom movie, or even if that, or say that's really popular and it franchises out and we get another one. Like put Carnage and Shriek together. Could we please do something like Maximum Carnage, but maybe make it a little more coherent? I would love that.
That would be awesome. And
Who's got the rights to Cloak and Dagger? Can we use them in
I
this?
think the Spider-Man people probably do. I can't. I don't know when they
Oh
first showed
boy,
up, but
oh boy, I would love that
I
because I love Cloak and Dagger.
that would be really cool, and it'll be interesting to see who they choose. I mean, we've discussed this before, like who's going to be the Venom host. Will it be Eddie Brock? Will it be Flash Thompson? Will it be She Venom? Who knows?
Yeah, do that. Wouldn't it be really funny if the female character wasn't Black Cat or anybody else and it was Venom?
It's
It's like
Felicia
we're gonna
Hardy
make
as
the.
Venom.
I'm not gonna argue with that. I'm not gonna argue with that. Do you think? Let me ask you this question, because I know a lot of comic book fans will like freak out and be like, no, you got to do Eddie Brock first, or we really like Flash Thompson. Do you think people would revolt if we started with a female Venom? Because I think you could maybe get away with it.
I think people would revolt and march in the streets with torches
Oh,
and pitchforks.
would okay? Let me ask you this way: would you? Because as a Venom fan, as a massive Venom fan, I wouldn't. I could potentially live with it if it was good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Venom fan in the world. I like a couple of stories that he's in, and I like Flash Thompson as Venom. So I'm not all that
I didn't even
attached to
say
any
I
of his
like very
character.
many of his stories. I just like
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I
I
really,
can be a fan of things that aren't that
I
good.
really like the design. That's
Yeah.
probably my favorite thing about it, at the very least.
You ever watch Spawn here? I'm really drawn to designs.
Especially McFarlane ones.
Oh yeah, that's a good call. And Spawn is kind of Venom from hell in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
exactly.
So and then they went and made Haunt, and then it was just another symbiote like character. Well, anyway, Dan, did you have anything else you wanted to say about this before we wrap
I
up?
don't know. I'd be interested to see in the comments what people think about our thoughts on the movie. Do you still not like it? Do you still love it? Are we insane? Are we right? I'd just like to know. Because as always, these videos are all about discourse. And as a Spider-Man fan, I'd like to see what other Spidey fans think of it. So definitely leave you guys' thoughts. I'd like to hear from you.
Well, it definitely was not the best superhero movie of the summer.
Oh no, no. Winter Soldier.
It definitely was not the worst superhero movie of the summer.
No, it wasn't.
And no, I liked it. And again, it seems like I'm liking it more and more the more I'm seeing it. So anyway, I'm glad we did that. That was a whole lot of
It
fun.
was.
And again, just as Dan said, please leave your comments. We're looking forward to reading them. And as always, we will see you next time. Thanks for watching. We sure appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed spending the last 2.5 hours with us. I'm Captain
And
Logan.
I'm Dan.
See you next time.